The first time the man looked at the sky, he wondered if the light that illuminated it belonged to something more than simple stars. In the vastness of the unknown, the whispers of something bigger began to take shape, winged figures that observed from above, immortal and eternal. But, next to that light, there were always shadows. In the darkest nights, when silence became unbearable, men also felt other presences, those that hid in the corners of the mind and earth, waiting, stalking. Thus the angels and demons were born. Not as simple entities of faith, but as the purest manifestations of fear and hope. The ancients told stories in fire, stories that explained the reason for good and evil. How could they coexist in the same world? The angels were created as protectors, beings of absolute purity, designed to be the bridge between the divine and the earthly. Each of them carried a mission, a responsibility to be the echo of the divine will. But not everyone accepted that role. And in that rejection, in that act of challenge, the first demon was born. It was not just Lucifer, although his fall is the most remembered. Before him, even in the oldest mythologies, there were already stories of beings that walked between light and darkness. In Sumeria, they talked about Lamashtu, a feared entity that stole the children of their mothers. In Egypt, the figure of Apophis, the great snake that tried to devour the sun, was a constant reminder that even in the luminous skies there were invisible threats. The oldest religions did not separate the angels from demons. Both were part of the same balance. How could a god demonstrate his power without something to challenge him? The demons, in that sense, were not simply evil. They were necessary. They represented human fragility, the weight of their decisions, and the constant internal struggle between the right and easy. But over time, the narratives changed. In Judaism and Christianity, Los Angeles became the guardians of humanity, sent to guide and protect, while demons became absolute enemies. However, even these new stories could not escape an awkward truth: demons were not always evil. Some, like Samuel, were designed to fulfill dark roles on behalf of the Creator himself. It was as if the evil was woven in the design of the divine. Imagine the moment Lucifer looked for the last time the light of the sky before falling. Was what felt? Or was it such a deep pain that words could not contain it? They called him proud. He was accused of wanting to be like his Creator. But what if everything he was looking for was a freedom that was never allowed to have? That moment, that break, began a war that never ended. Angels against angels, brothers faced in a conflict that would resonate in every corner of the universe. And with each blow, with each tear spilled, more demons were born. It was not only betrayal. There was something deeper, something that burned in the hearts of those fallen. Humanity called him hate, but perhaps it was love, love for something that was taken from them, love for a freedom that they would never know again. Each demon carries that wound, a reminder of what they were once and what they will never be again. And the angels, were they really as pure as it was believed? There are stories of angels who disobey, not for evil, but for compassion. The gods, those who descended to the earth and fell in love with the daughters of men, did not to destroy, but because they were touched by the beauty of the mortal. However, for that act, they were convicted. The line between angel and demon began to blur. In each culture, the names and forms changed, but the conflict persisted. The ancient Greeks talked about daemons, spirits that could be both good and bad. The Hebrews feared the Shedim, demons that fed on fear. In India, the Asuras and Devas eternal battles, reflecting the internal struggles of the human being. And in all this, humanity became a battlefield, trapped between forces that could barely understand. Every time a man gave in to temptation, a demon gained strength. Every time someone acted with selfless kindness, an angel shone with more intensity. But what really meant this confrontation? Were the angels and demons mere external representations of the internal battles of humanity? Or were they real forces, observing from the shadows, waiting for the right time to act? The history of angels and demons is not just a story of the divine. It is the history of humanity, of its deepest fears and its most dreams high. And while the flames of hell burning and the wings of Los Angeles extend, there is a question that nobody can answer with certainty: what will happen when the balance is broken? In the distance, an echo is heard, a murmur that grows in intensity. Something is moving, something that has been waiting for millennia. And the angels, those guardians of the light, feel that their wings tremble. The battle is not over. It is barely starting. In the beginning, when everything was silent and empty, the Creator spoke. The first lights were born from his voice, flashes so pure that they could cross infinite darkness. Those lights were not simple flames, they had a form, will, and a clear purpose, bring the essence of their Creator to every corner of existence. Thus the angels, the first children, were born, molded from a perfection that humans could never understand. Each of them was unique. Some shone with the intensity of 1,000 souls, while others had a calm that seemed to wrap the entire universe in a mantle of peace. Miguel, Gabriel, Raphael, names that would resonate for the centuries, but that at that time were only whispers in eternity. There was no envy between them, or pride, or fear. There was only love, an unwavering love for its Creator and its purpose. But then something unexpected arose. Among the angels closest to the Creator was one that shone like none, Lucifer, whose name meant bearer of light. Its beauty was indescribable, its voice as a song that could make the stars cry. But within it a spark began to burn, a question that should not be formulated: why should it only serve? Why, if he was also light, could not be equal to his Creator? That spark became a flame. Lucifer looked around and saw that many angels followed him, not by obligation, but because they felt that his question was legitimate. What did it mean to be perfect if you couldn't choose? Thus began the first act of challenge, not from hatred, but from a search for freedom. It was at that time that good and evil, until then non-existent concepts, separated as two rivers that would never be found again. The Creator, seeing what happened, gave an ultimatum. The angels had to choose, stay in the light or follow Lucifer towards the unknown. Thousands of them chose to fall, not because they were wicked, but because they believed in the dream of being something else. It was an act of love, but also of rebellion. And that act marked the beginning of a new era, one in which perfection ceased to be absolute. Lucifer's fall was not a simple exile. It was a transformation. When he was torn from the sky, his light began to twist, to burn from the inside. Its beauty became something terrifying, its song in a roar that made the mountains tremble. Those who followed him suffered the same destination. They became demons, not because they chose evil, but because the separation of light left an indelible mark on them. But even in his fall, Lucifer kept loving what he had lost. His hatred towards the Creator was nothing more than a reflection of his despair. How could an entity that preached love to expel those who simply wanted more? That question consumed it, transformed it into the Prince of Hell, the leader of the fallen. And with him, demons began to build a kingdom, not as a shelter, but as a testimony of their pain. Meanwhile, the angels who remained in the light also changed. The sky was no longer an absolute place of peace. The shadow of the fall of his brothers left scars on them. Miguel, the leader of the heavenly armies, assumed the role of protector, but in his interior he always loaded with the weight of having fought against those who once called brothers. Gabriel, the messenger, began to doubt the words he had, wondering if they were really fair. Even the most faithful could not ignore that good now carried a burden of pain and loss. Good and evil, concepts that did not exist before, became opposite forces that defined everything that would come later. But was the evil really pure evil? Or was it simply the consequence of a choice? And good, was it always correct? The angels and demons became reflections on each other, eternally linked by a common past and a struggle that a winner would never have. Humans, hearing these stories, transformed them into symbols. For some, Lucifer was the final villain, the traitor who had broken the harmony of heaven. For others, he was a martyr, the bearer of a truth that no one else dared to question. The same happened with Los Angeles, seen as impeccable protectors by some and as instruments of a system rigid by others. But in the depths of hell, at the top of the sky, both sides knew the truth. Good and evil, they were not as different as thought. Both were born from love, but from a love that took opposite paths. And in that paradox was the true mystery of creation, that even the purest light could generate shadows, and that in the deepest darkness there could be flashes of light. The angels looked towards the earth with hope, protecting humans from the claws of demons. But demons did not always seek to destroy. Many of them, such as Asmodeus or Astaroth, had desires for something else, something that they could not define themselves. It was as if, despite everything, they continued to long for what they once were. On the horizon, the two sides knew that the conflict would not end. But there was something else that kept them restless. Something that moved between the shadows and the stars, something that they could not even understand at all. And so, while good and evil continued their eternal battle, creation continued to progress, loaded with questions that no one could answer. Los Angeles, in the Judeo-Christian tradition, are fascinating beings that inhabit the divine and the earthly. In the scriptures, they appear as messengers, protectors, warriors, and even carriers of judgment. But behind its heavenly image there are stories loaded with emotion, mystery, and a deep connection with humanity. In the Bible, its presence is imposing. They are the emissaries of God, those who descend to the earth to deliver crucial messages. Gabriel, for example, appears before the young Mary with a news that will change the history of the world, the birth of Jesus. Imagine that moment, the sky opening in silence, the light figure revealing a divine plan, and the mixture of fear and astonishment on the face of a humble woman. At that time, Gabriel was not only a messenger, it was the voice of eternity touching the mortal. But not all angels appear as peaceful figures. In the book of Exodus, an angel of death crosses Egypt during the last plague, leaving an indelible brand of fear and power. His step is silent, but devastating, remembering that angels are not only protectors, but also executors of divine justice. This dark side of their mission makes them complex figures, in which compassion and duty are intertwined. The Apocryphal, those texts not included in the biblical fee, offers an even deeper look at the angelic world. In the Book of Enoch, angels known as the guards play a crucial role. These beings, sent to observe humanity, end up being seduced by what they see. They fall in love with human women and engender giants, known as the Nephilim. This act, which could be interpreted as a meter of love or a challenge to divine laws, leads them to their fall. Here, angels are no longer impeccable figures, they are beings with emotions, desires, and consequences. One of the most shocking stories of the Apocryphal is that of Azazel, a fallen angel that teaches prohibited secret humans, such as the manufacture of weapons and the use of cosmetics. Its history resonates as a warning: knowledge, although powerful, can be a burden when it is not used with wisdom. Azazel is punished, chained in the depths of the earth, his figure eclipsed by guilt and repentance. But even in its fall, there is something deeply human in it, an internal struggle that transcends its divine nature. Angels are also protectors in moments of danger. In Daniel's book, an angel closes the jaws of the lions when the prophet is thrown into the pit by his faith. The scene is intense, the darkness of the well, the roars that suddenly stop, and a light presence that calms chaos. This episode shows the closeness of Los Angeles with those who remain faithful, a connection that transcends fear and despair. However, its role is not always visible. Often, the angels operate in the background, guiding humans without being recognized. In Hebrews 13 verse 2, we are reminded, "Do not forget to practice hospitality, because thanks to her, without knowing it, they stayed at angels." This idea suggests that angels do not always present with bright wings or glowing faces. Sometimes, they are among us, camouflaged in everyday life, testing the goodness of our hearts. In the scriptures, Los Angeles also have hierarchies, each with a specific purpose. The seraphims, described in Isaiah, burn with the divine glory, covering their faces and feet with wings while singing, "Holy, holy, holy." His presence is overwhelming, a reminder of the inaccessible holiness of God. On the other hand, the cherubs, guardians of Eden, are heavenly protectors, majestic figures with multiple faces that represent divine omnipotence. And then there is Miguel, the commander of the heavenly armies. In Apocalypse's book, we see it leading the battle with Trajan the dragon, symbol of the forces of evil. His sword shines as dawn, his unwavering determination. Miguel not only fights for heaven, fight for humanity, for the hope of a future free of darkness. In every blow of his sword, there is a promise of redemption. But, despite their greatness, angels also reflect the fragility of creation. The guards, the Nephilim, Azazel, their stories remind us that even the closest beings to divinity can be lost. And, in that loss, we find a reflection of our own struggle, our own falls. Regardless of the context, angels in the Judeo-Christian tradition are much more than simple faith figures. They are witnesses of our lives, participants in our internal and external battles. They are the whisper in times of doubt, the force in times of weakness, and the reminder that, although fragile, we can always look high. On the horizon, its presence remains a mystery, an echo that resonates between the sacred and the earthly. But there is more than they observe carefully, something that seems to be changing. The stories that come will bring us even more to their purpose, to what is hidden behind its light and its shadow, leaving a door to the unknown. It all started with an unusual shine in the sky, a flash of light that did not promise hope, but rebellion. Lucifer, the most beautiful in Los Angeles, the bearer of the light, rose with a majesty that eclipsed his brothers. His glow was unmatched, his intelligence, brilliant. But in his perfection something dark was born, a silent germ that grew to become his downfall, pride. In the center of the heavenly kingdom, the throne of God radiated an indescribable glory, a light that no mortal could contemplate without being consumed. The angels sang praises incessantly, their voices forming an eternal symphony that filled the confines of heaven. However, among those songs, a thought emerged in Lucifer's mind: why not me? That question, so simple and so devastating, broke the perfect balance of heaven. Lucifer was not a simple angel, he was the anointed cherub, the guardian of the divine mysteries. His beauty was such that even the other angels looked at him with admiration. But that admiration became a load. Why should he always lean to another? Why couldn't he be the one who ruled? That fire of ambition consumed it, and soon ceased to be a passing thought to transform into an internal cry that demanded action. Lucifer began speaking quietly with other angels, his sweet words like honey but loaded with poison. Why serve when we can reign? Why depend on a throne when we can create a new one? His followers grew in number, attracted to his charisma, for his promise of freedom. Among them were beings of immense strength and wisdom, those who believed that they deserved more than being simple servers. The rebellion did not arrive as a sudden outbreak, it was a crescendo, an accumulation of tensions that finally exploded. Lucifer, with his glowing wings and his burning gaze, rose in front of the throne and proclaimed his challenge. His voice echoed as a thunder, "I won't serve." In those words, eternity trembled. The sky, which had been a place of perfect harmony, was divided into two, those who followed God and those who, blinded by Lucifer's promises, chose to challenge him. The confrontation was terrible. Miguel, the commander of the heavenly armies, led Los Angeles loyal in a battle that shook the foundations of the sky itself. Swords made of light collided with shadows that seemed to devour everything in their path. The shouts of the battle were mixed with the sound of the skies tearing. Every Miguel's blow was not only strength, it was justice. Each Lucifer movement was not just a challenge, it was despair to fulfill his dream. The end came with a deafening roar. Miguel, with his burning sword, faced Lucifer in a duel that seemed to last an eternity. With a decisive blow, Lucifer was defeated. His wings, formerly bright like the aurora, darkened, and his light went out. With a cry that resonated in every corner of creation, he and his followers were expelled from heaven. The fall was not only physical, it was spiritual. They were thrown into the abyss, to a place of darkness and absolute separation of divine glory. Lucifer was no longer the bearer of light, now it was Satan, the adversary, the prince of darkness. The angels who followed him became demons, his forms distorted by the corruption of his own choice. But even in his fall, Lucifer did not give up. From the shadows, he began to put his revenge, determined to destroy God's creation, to drag humanity towards the same despair he felt. Its beauty had been transformed in hate, his ambition in resentment. Now it was the tempting, the one who whispered in the ears of mortals, sowing doubt and chaos. In spite of everything, its fall was not just a heavenly tragedy, it was a mirror for humanity. How many times pride, ambition, and desire to be more have led men to their own destruction? In Lucifer, we see the eternal struggle between good and evil, between service and ego, between light and shadow. However, something remains disturbing in its history. As the centuries pass and the echoes of their fall are heard in stories and traditions, the question remains, Lucifer will ever look high with repentance? Or will your hatred continue to feed the flames of your eternal exile? The answer, perhaps, is found in the depths of the abyss, where his burning gaze still challenges heaven that expelled him. In a time when the gods walked between mortals and the line between the divine and the earthly, the stories of demons were born. They were not simple beings of absolute evil, but complex entities loaded with symbolism and fear. Before the Jewish tradition conceptualized demons as fallen or evil servers, these creatures already inhabited the nightmares and legends of ancient civilizations. In the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, under the scorching sun of Egypt and between the mountains and seas of Greece, figures that embodied the darkest and most primary forces emerged. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of the first great civilizations, demons were not just bearers of evil, they were personifications of the chaotic forces of the universe. There, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, entities such as Pazuzu, the demon of the southwest wind. With his monstrous face, eagle wings, and sharp claws, Pazuzu was feared and, paradoxically, also invoked. Although bearer of pests and famine, it was believed that he could protect the pregnant women of Lamashtu, an even more feared demon, known for stalking newborns and stealing their lives with cruelty without regrets. It was a strange and scary balance, a demon used to counteract another. The Sumerian clay tablets also talked about Lilith, a female figure of the night that would later merge with Lilith's myth in later traditions. Lilith was a creature of seduction and danger, a representation of unleashed femininity and what men feared losing control. He roamed the deserts, bringing with him disturbing dreams and, often, death. His mere mention could freeze the blood of those who lived under the Mesopotamian stars. Meanwhile, in Egypt, demons were not independent, but servants of the gods or guardians of the Bur. These figures inhabited the funeral texts, such as the Book of the Dead, where they played the role of examiners on the trip of the soul. Apep, the chaos snake, was perhaps the most feared. To each dawn, he tried to devour the sun god while sailing through heaven in his sacred boat. Every day, the fight between Apep and Rap symbolized the eternal struggle between order and chaos, a reminder that evil could not be eradicated, only content. However, not all Egyptian demons were cosmic forces. Some, like Amit, the soul-devouring, they expected in the trial room to punish those who did not overcome the balance of the balance. This creature, with a crocodile head, a lion body and hippo rear, embodied the deepest fears of the ancient Egyptians, the eternal punishment for an impure life. For them, demons not only existed as external threats, but as reflections of the moral failures themselves. On the other hand, in the mountains and coasts of Greece, demons adopted a different form. The Greeks called them daemons, and not all were evil. Originally, the daemons were intermediary spirits between the gods and humans, bearers of inspiration, wisdom or, in some cases, misfortune. However, over time, some of them acquired a more sinister reputation. The Erinyes, also known as Furias, were avenging forces that persecuted those who broke sacred oaths or committed heinous crimes. His fury was relentless, his terrifying presence, and his purpose, unwavering, do justice at any cost. There were also the Kirs, female spirits that roamed the battlefields, eager to devour the souls of the fallen. His winged figures and bright eyes became a nightmare vision for wounded warriors, who knew that their presence meant the end. The Greeks described them as inevitable, a reminder that even the bravest could not escape their destiny. The fascinating thing about these preliminary traditions is that demons were not simply evil in an absolute sense. They were a mixture of terror and respect, a reminder of the unpredictable and uncontrolled forces that governed the world. In Mesopotamia, they were winds and shadows; in Egypt, chaos and trial; in Greece, revenge and fate. More than villains, they were actors in the cosmic drama, reflections of the deepest human fears, and lessons that societies could not ignore. As these stories spread through generations, crossing borders and evolving over time, they merged with other traditions. The figures of Pazuzu, Apep, and the Kirs sowed the seeds for the demons that the Judeo-Christian world would later adopt. However, even under layers of reinterpretation, the echoes of these first stories remain, reminding us that evil, in all its forms, has always been a constant shadow in the human heart. And so, in the dark of the night, when the whispers of the wind bring echoes of ancient stories, we cannot avoid asking ourselves, do these entities keep watching ourselves from the margins of our perception? Or is our own mind that gives them life, as did the first villages thousands of years ago? The truth is that your legacy, whether real or imagined, is still alive, waiting in the shadows. In the still starry night, where the world seems arrested and the whispers of the wind are mixed with the heartbeat, stories of beings arise that transcend the human. The angels, in Judaism, are not simple ethereal figures adorned with wings and shining lights. They are messengers of the eternal, manifestations of His will, and guardians who connect the sky with the earth. Invisible, but always present, its existence fills the gaps of human uncertainty, reminding us that there are major forces at stake, even when everything seems lost. In the sacred texts of Judaism, Los Angeles do not act by their own will. They are divine emissaries, carriers of messages that can comfort or shine, depending on the mission entrusted by God. One of the most moving stories is found in Genesis, when 3 angels visit Abraham in the heat of the day. Under the shadows of an oak, the patriarch offers them hospitality, without knowing who they were at first. Each of them had a clear purpose, one to announce Isaac's miraculous birth, another to warn about the imminent destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and a third to fulfill God's will in that judgment. There was no doubt or hesitation in their actions, only absolute obedience to the celestial mandate. But angels don't always bring happy news. In the same destruction of Sodom, one of them guides Lot and his family outside the condemned city, insisting that they do not look back. His warning was not only a physical mandate, but a spiritual lesson, not clinging to the past when the present and the future are the only thing left. However, Lot's wife disobeyed, and her destiny was sealed in a salt statue, an eternal reminder of the fragility of human will against divine power. Later, in Jacob's story, Los Angeles reappear, this time in a dream. A staircase that connects the earth with heaven, with angels going up and down through it, symbolizes the unwavering link between man and God. But the most heartbreaking moment comes when Jacob, on the edge of a crucial change in his life, fights all night with a being that many interpret as an angel. That struggle, intense and physical, represents the human effort to understand and accept the divine. In the end, Jacob not only wins a new name, Israel, but also a new identity, marked by the experience of having faced the celestial. In Judaism, angels are not only messengers, they are also guardians. The Midrash, a collection of rabbinic interpretations, describes how angels accompany people in moments of danger or vulnerability. It is said that each child has an assigned angel that protects him and that, during sleep, he whispers secrets of the Torah in his ear. However, when awakening, those sacred words are lost, leaving only a vague sensation of comfort or inexplicable guide. One of the most shocking moments where angels appear as guardians is in the Exodus. While the people of Israel flee from Egypt, an angel of God is placed between the Israelites and the Egyptian army. During the night, this heavenly presence provides a protection barrier, wrapping the chosen people in a column of cloud and fire. There are no words, just action. There is no prominence, only fulfillment of the divine duty. That is the essence of angels in Judaism, to serve without seeking glory. However, not all encounters with angels are visible or direct. Sometimes, his presence is felt in the soft breeze, in the whisper of a sheet or in an intuition flash. The rabbis teach that angels are also present in our moral elections, fighting the negative inclinations that threaten to get away from the right path. They are invisible companions in our internal battles, silent forces that guide us towards the light when the shadows of doubt and despair surround us. In Jewish tradition, angels are not static figures, they have specific hierarchies and functions. The mystical texts, such as the Zohar, and the rabbinic comments describe angels such as the seraphim, ardent in their love for God, and the cherubs, which guard sacred places such as the Ark of the Alliance. There are also the malachim, literally messengers, who are responsible for interacting directly with humans. But what unites all these categories is its absolute devotion and purity. They do not know sin or ego, his only mission is to fulfill the will of God. Despite their proximity to the divine, Los Angeles also have limits. In Judaism, it is taught that they are lower than humans in a crucial aspect: they do not have free will. They cannot question or choose, they simply act. Humans, on the contrary, have the ability to decide, fall and get up, which, paradoxically, brings them closer to God. Angels can be perfect, but they cannot love how humans, with all the intensity and fragility it implies. And it is that human fragility that, in the end, gives Los Angeles their purpose. They are there to guide us, protect us and, in some cases, challenge us. They are not heroes or protagonists, but instruments of a greater will. And although their wings can be invisible and their imperceptible presence, there are moments in life in which we feel their intervention. Perhaps in a decision that saves us, in a hand that lifts us when we have fallen, or in an inexplicable feeling of peace in the middle of the storm. Judaism, with its millenary wisdom, reminds us that we are not alone. Even in the darkest moments, there are forces working in our favor, although we cannot always see them. Because in the end, angels do not need to be seen to fulfill their mission, they just need us to listen to them in the silence of our souls. And in that silence, when the world is still and the whispers of the divine are audible, a door opens towards what comes next. In the gloom of an ancient church, only illuminated by the dim light of some candles, the invisible struggle that Christians have described for centuries feels. A battle that does not belong to the physical world, but to a spiritual plane where eternity is decided. Angels and demons, opposite and eternal forces, fight without rest, embodying good and evil in its purest form. This vision, so entrenched in Christianity, has shaped not only the faith of millions, but also the way we perceive the mysteries of the universe and our own existence. The story begins long before human time could be told. In the heavens, a cherub named Lucifer, bearer of light, rose with incomparable beauty and splendor. He was one of the closest to God, a perfect creature in wisdom and glow. But at some point, that perfection was twisted. The pride, the sin that precedes the fall, sprouted in his heart. Why should it serve when he could govern? Why worship when you could be worshipped? It was then that Lucifer rebelled, challenging the Creator and dragging with him a third of the heavenly angels. The Bible describes this moment in images loaded with power and tragedy. "I saw Satan fall from heaven as a ray," says Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. Lucifer's fall was not only a physical expulsion, but an eternal condemnation. He and his followers were thrown into exterior darkness, transforming into demons, beings that had changed their divine light for corrosive darkness. The heavenly battle marked the beginning of a conflict that continues to resonate in the hearts and souls of men. The angels who remained faithful to God, led by Archangel Michael, became the defenders of good. In the Apocalypse, it describes how Miguel and his angels fought against the dragon, the old snake that is the devil. It was not a symbolic fight, but a real and fierce confrontation, a war that determined the fate of the cosmos. But even after being defeated and expelled, Satan did not stop in his mission of destroying God's creation. If he could not rule the sky, he would seek to corrupt the earth. In the Christian narrative, the angels are not only warriors. They are also guides, protectors and messengers. They appear to men at key moments, such as Gabriel when he announces to Mary who will be the mother of the Savior, or the angel that comforts Jesus in the Gethsemane garden before her passion. They act in silence, always obeying the divine will, without deviating or for a moment. They are the eyes and hands of God in the world, invisible but always present. On the other hand, demons work in the dark, seeking to seduce, deceive and destroy. Satan, described as the father of lies, does not appear with horns and tail, but with soft words and seductive promises. From the Garden of Eden, where the snake tempted Eve, to the deserts where Jesus faced the temptations of the evil one, demons have infiltrated human lives, exploiting our weaknesses and doubts. They cannot force, but they can persuade. They cannot possess without permission, but look for any crack in the soul to enter. The fight between angels and demons is not just an external battle, it is also internal. Each moral choice, every thought, and human action is influenced by these forces. Christianity teaches that angels whisper us towards virtue, while demons try to drag us towards sin. This constant struggle is reflected in the words of St. Paul: "We have no fight against blood and flesh, but against principalities, against powers, against the governors of the darkness of this century, against spiritual hosts of evil in the celestial regions. The conflict takes shape in the stories of the saints, who faced demonic temptations and attacks with unwavering faith. San Antonio, the great desert hermit, narrated how demons tormented him with visions and noise to break his spirit. However, every time they seemed to succeed, the angels came to comfort him, strengthening their will. These stories are not simple horror stories, they are testimonies of the victory of good over evil, of the human ability to resist even the darkest forces with divine help. Christianity also speaks of a final outcome for this eternal conflict. In the Apocalypse, the final battle is described, where good will triumph over evil. Satan and his angels will be thrown into the lake of fire, while the righteous will be taken to the presence of God. There will be no more tears, no pain, or darkness. But until that moment, the fight continues. Each act of goodness, each prayer, and every moral decision is a small victory in this great battle. In everyday life, this vision of the conflict between angels and demons may seem distant, almost unreal. However, in the darkest moments of existence, when despair looms and the soul seems to get lost, the feeling that we are not alone arises. A whisper of hope, an intuition of comfort, an impulse towards good, all this are traces of that invisible struggle that is fought for each of us. Angels and demons are not just mythological figures, they are living symbols of our deepest aspirations and fears, reflecting the eternal battle between the light and the shadow that inhabits the human heart. In the silence of a starry night, under the vast sky that covers the deserts of Arabia, the recitation of Orion verse is heard. Words flow like a serene river, loaded with power and meaning, telling stories that explain the mysteries of the world, good and evil. Among these stories, there is that of Iblis, a figure that does not belong completely either to the world of angels or that of men, but whose rebellion marked the beginning of an eternal struggle. Iblis was not an angel in the traditional sense. According to the Islamic tradition, he was a jinn, a creature made of smokeless fire, while the angels were created of light. Despite its different nature, Iblis lived among Los Angeles, raised by their devotion and knowledge. It was a being whose closeness to Allah seemed to guarantee a place of eternal honor. But Iblis's heart kept a secret, pride, a spark that would soon become the fire that would consume it. When Allah created Adam, the first man, he formed him from the mud, molding him carefully and giving him a unique spirit. Los Angeles, in pure obedience, bowed to the order of Allah to prostrate this new creation, a gesture that was not of worship, but of respect towards divine work. However, Iblis refused. His pride blinded him, and his words resonated with challenge, I am better than him. You created me with fire, and to him of mud. That refusal, that moment of insubordination, marked the fall of Iblis. Allah cursed him and expelled him from his presence, but before leaving, Iblis made a petition, time. Time to show that humans were not worthy of the position Allah had granted to them. He swore tempting humanity, carrying them along the path of perdition and demonstrating that they were weak, easily corruptible. Allah, in his infinite wisdom, granted him that period, knowing that even in the acts of Iblis the purpose would be manifested divine. Unlike Judeo-Christian traditions, the Quran does not describe angels as beings capable of disobeying. Los Angeles, in Islam, are completely obedient to Allah, without free will. This distinguishes Iblis from the fallen angels from other religions. His fall is not that of an angel, but that of a jinn who, because of his arrogance, lost his high position. Since that day, Iblis has been known as Shaitan, the tempting, the declared enemy of Adam's children. He does not force humans to sin, it simply whispers, incites, take advantage of the cracks in faith and will. Humans, with their free will, decide whether to resist or succumb. It is a constant struggle, a test that defines life itself. The Quran describes Iblis' methods with precision. It moves with stealth, as an invisible enemy that stalks in moments of weakness. Whispers in the mind, empty promises, ephemeral pleasures, thus acts. In the story of Adam and Eve, Iblis tempted the couple in paradise, promising them immortality and power if they ate the forbidden tree. But his promise was a lie, and sin led to his expulsion from that sacred place. Even so, Allah showed mercy towards Adam and Eve, guiding them towards repentance and redemption, remembering that even in error, humans can find the way back. The influence of Iblis is not limited to the great acts of temptation. In everyday life, he sows discord, feeds pride, envy, and hate. In the moments of anger, in the whispers that invite selfishness, in the doubts that erode faith, its presence is perceived. But Islam also teaches that its power is limited. Cannot force anyone to deviate, you can only invite. The resistance to its temptations is an act of faith, a test that strengthens the soul. The struggle between Iblis and humanity is parallel to the internal struggle of each individual between good and evil. But in this battle, humans are not alone. Allah, in His mercy, has sent angels to guide and protect. Angels record every action, good or bad, and are silent witnesses of human decisions. In addition, the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad provide tools to resist prayer, the constant memory of Allah, charity, and the search for knowledge. The story of Iblis is not just a story of rebellion and fall. It is a mirror of the evidence we face as human beings. It reminds us that pride can destroy even the most devout, that temptation is always present, but that Allah's mercy is infinite for those who seek to repent. It is a warning and hope, a reminder that even in front of the most cunning enemy, faith and humility can succeed. And so, in the silence of the night, under the stars that seem to whisper the secrets of the past, one reflects on the continuous struggle between good and evil, a struggle that began long before humanity gave its first breath and that it will continue while there are hearts that can be tempted and souls looking for light. In the ancient lands of Persia, where the winds drag the echoes of lost civilizations, one of the deepest and most universal ideas about good and evil was born, the dualism of Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu in Zoroastrismo. This belief system, attributed to the Zarathustra prophet, raises a universe divided between light and darkness, truth and lies, creation and destruction. Two eternally opposite forces that struggle to dominate the fate of the world and the souls that inhabit it. Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom, is the incarnation of the absolute good. From the beginning, its existence was marked by purity, truth, asha, and order. He is a divine creator, the person responsible for all the good, of light, of crystalline water, of the heavens and the fertile earth. His thoughts and actions are in perfect harmony, and his goal is to guide humans towards spiritual lighting, towards a world where peace prevails and chaos is eradicated. Ahura Mazda is not a distant being, but an active protector, which provides the tools for humanity to choose the right path. But where there is light, a shadow also emerges. Angra Mainyu, known as the destructive spirit, opposes everything that Ahura Mazda represents. If Ahura Mazda is the order, Angra Mainyu is chaos. If the first is the truth, the second is the lie, drudge. Angra Mainyu does not seek to create, seeks to destroy. His weapons are corruption, disease, war, and desolation. He sends demons, devas, to sow evil in the hearts of men, diverting them from the path of good. In Zoroastrismo, the world is presented as a cosmic battlefield between these two opposite forces. But unlike other religions, there is no balance here. Good is superior and is intended to prevail. Ahura Mazda does not fight alone. Beside are the Amisha Spenters, the benefactor spirits, who are extensions of their goodness and divine will. Each of these beings represents an aspect of good, devotion, immortality, truth, justice, among others. These angels, so call them, are not distant figures, but spiritual guides that inspire humans to act in harmony with Asha. On the other hand, Angra Mainyu has his allies, the devas, demons that represent vices and destructive passions. These beings work tirelessly to encourage hate, greed, and deception. Its objective is to pervert the creation of Ahura Mazda, contaminating both the body and the human spirit. In the Zoroastric worldview, diseases, natural disasters, and conflicts are not mere random events, but manifestations of the influence of Angra Mainyu and its henchmen. In the heart of this cosmic struggle is humanity. Unlike angels and demons, men and women have free will to choose between good and evil, between Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. Each thought, word, and action has a moral weight, and these choices determine not only the individual destiny, but also the final outcome of the battle between light and darkness. Humanity, in this sense, is not a mere spectator, he is a key actor in Ashur's victory over Drudge. Zoroastric scriptures, such as Oster, describe this battle in detail. The texts speak of a time at the end of the days, when good will definitely defeat evil. This event, known as Frashokareti, will be an era of renewal and perfection, where the world will be purified of all evil, and the righteous will be rewarded with immortality. Angra Mainyu and his demons will be destroyed forever, and the creation of Ahura Mazda will reach its fullness. However, this destiny is not guaranteed without the active participation of humans. Each individual has a role to play in this cosmic battle. Prayer, purification rituals, respect for nature, and acts of goodness are tools to strengthen the kingdom of Ahura Mazda. At the same time, resistance to temptations, selfishness, and destructive passions is essential to weaken the influence of Angra Mainyu. This struggle not only defines the destiny of the individual soul, but also that of all creation. The Zoroastric vision of angels and demons is not simply a mythical narrative, but an invitation to reflect on the impact of our actions in the world around us. Each decision, however small, is a step towards light or towards the shadow. It is a constant choice, a reminder that good and evil are not abstract entities, but realities that live in the human heart. Under the light of the sacred fire, a symbol of Ahura Mazda, the ancient Zoroastrians gathered to renew their commitment to good. That fire, eternal and pure, represented the flame of the truth that burns in each soul, a lighthouse that guides even on the darkest nights. But like that flame, the fight never ceases. How strong is the will to resist shadows? What price are we willing to pay to preserve the light? In the vast and ancient scriptures of Hinduism, the struggle between Devas and Asuras is more than a simple cosmic confrontation, it is the representation of the eternal conflict between order and chaos, truth and falsehood, light and darkness. In this epic scenario, the Devas, gods, are beings of purity and harmony, while the Asuras, demons, are beings that represent the distortion of balance and selfishness, pushing the universe towards the disorder. The Devas, like angels in other traditions, are associated with goodness, wisdom, and protection of the world. They are the guardians of the Dharma, the cosmic law, and the truth, and its purpose is to ensure that the balance of the universe remains intact. These divine entities are frequently represented as radiant beings, full of light and power, and are worshipped by devotees looking for the guide of the gods to lead a virtuous life. Among them, figures such as Indra, the king of the Devas, Vishnu, the protector of the universe, and Agni, the god of sacred fire. On the other hand, the Asuras are the antithesis of the Devas. Although in their first representations they were considered as primordial gods, over time they associated with dark forces that opposed the cosmic order. Asuras seek power at all costs, often challenging the will of the Devas and fighting for supremacy over the universe. In the Rigveda, one of the oldest texts of Hinduism, there is talk of enmity between the Devas and the Asuras, a struggle that is perpetuated throughout the ages. Asuras, often possessing great strength and ambition, they are described as beings that rebel against the gods, seeking to control the universe by selfish and destructive means. In this cosmic struggle, the fate of humanity plays a crucial role. Human beings, in Hinduism, are called to align with the Devas and reject the corrupting influence of the Asuras. Morality and good actions are essential to ensure the triumph of the Devas over the Asuras. The nature of this conflict is not only divine, but also human, since humans are perceived as active participants in the maintenance of the balance between good and evil. The history of this struggle is manifested in one of the greatest epic of Hinduism, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. In both texts, the Devas and Asuras fight in epic battles that symbolize the eternal conflict between light and darkness. The heroes and villains of these stories are, in many ways, representations of the Devas and Asuras, and every action they take has cosmic implications that affect the destiny of the world. But, unlike other religions, Hinduism does not consider Asuras as evil beings by nature. In many stories, the Asuras are described as powerful and brave beings, who fight for their own ideals, and that sometimes have legitimate motives to oppose the Devas. This complexity in the figures of the Asuras highlights the flexibility of the Hindu worldview, which sees the world as a place full of nuances and contradictions. Asuras are not simply evil beings, but forces that represent selfish desires, arrogance, and disdain in the divine order. On the other hand, they devas them. Although they represent the divine and the good, they also have their own weaknesses and defects. The stories about the devas show that, although their intentions are pure, sometimes they are involved in conflicts or in struggles for power. However, despite their failures, the devas remain the defenders of light and justice, and their intervention in the world is seen as a means to restore order and harmony. In Greek and Roman mythology, the concept of angels and demons also has a complex dimension. Although there are no angels in the Christian sense, the divine figures in Greek and Roman mythology play similar roles as mediators between the gods and mortals, and as guardians or protectors of certain aspects of the world. In Greek mythology, the gods of Olympus, such as Zeus, Athena, Apollo, and Artemisa, are those who intercede in human affairs. These deities, although powerful and full of wisdom, do not always behave ideally, often showing jealousy, revenge, and human passions that make them seem closer to mortals than one could expect from divine beings. In this sense, the figures of the Greek gods have a dual nature. On the one hand, they represent order and good, on the other, they are subject to the same human emotions as mortals. The demons in Greek mythology, such as Typhoon, a monstrous beast, or the titans that challenge the gods of Olympus, represent chaos and destruction. These beings are not only forces of nature but also symbols of rebellion against the divine order. In the same Roman tradition, the gods like Jupiter and Mars perform similar roles, while demonic figures, such as the gods of underworld Hades and Pluto, represent death and punishment. Despite their cultural differences, both in Hindu mythology and in Greek and Roman traditions, the struggle between divine and dark forces is a recurring issue. Devas and Asuras, gods and demons, are reflexes of human complexities, the struggle between the desire for power and the need for order, corruption against virtue, light against darkness. Each tradition, in its own way, offers a vision of a universe in constant conflict, a cosmos where human and divine elections are fundamental to determine the final balance between good and evil. In ancient Greece and Rome, the distinction between gods and demons was fundamentally different from what we can find in monotheistic religions such as Christianity. In these cultures, the gods were powerful, immortal and divine beings, responsible for the control of the universe and the protection of humans. The demons, on the other hand, were entities that could represent both destructive and intermediary forces between the gods and mortals. The border between the divine and the demonic was not as clear and resounding as in other traditions, and the figures that inhabited this intermediate space had complex and varied characteristics. The gods, heavenly and protective beings in Greek and Roman mythology, the gods were revered as supreme entities that inhabited Olympus or heaven. The ability to control was attributed destiny, nature, and human emotions. Each god or goddess had his own domain. Zeus, Jupiter in Rome, was the king of the gods and the lord of heaven. Athena, Minerva, was the goddess of wisdom and strategy. Apollo in Rome, ruled the sun and music, and Artemisa, Diana, was the goddess of hunting and nature. The Greek and Roman gods were immortal and possessed supernatural skills, but often presented human defects, such as anger, lattice, the desire for revenge and ambition. Despite their failures, the gods were seen as beings that maintained the order of the cosmos, regulating the stations, the weather, and the course of the life of mortals. They were worshipped and sacrifices were offered with the hope of obtaining favors, blessings, and protection. However, the gods were not always benevolent. The relationship of humans with deities was often based on respect and fear, since the gods could be capricious and vindictive if they were not properly honored. The demons, guardians, spirits, and dark forces in Greek and Roman mythology, the concept of demon was not necessarily negative, but represented a wide class of beings that could act as guardians, spiritual guides, or even as destructive forces. The word demon comes from the Greek daimon, which originally did not have an evil connotation, but referred to a spirit or being supernatural that guided or influenced mortals, both for good and for evil. In Greece, the daemons could be good or bad, but in general, they were seen as entities that were in the intermediate space between the gods and men. Some demons, such as the Agatha daemons, good demons, were considered protectors and guides that helped people achieve success and virtue. For example, the figure of the daimon of Socrates, which manifested himself as an inner voice, was seen as a spiritual guide that prevented him from committing immoral acts or being wrong in his decisions. However, there were also evil demons, such as the cacodæmones, which were associated with corruption, decay, and chaos. These demons not only influenced mortals' minds, but they could also trigger natural catastrophes, diseases, and disasters. The cacodæmones were seen as vindictive spirits, responsible for sowing darkness and despair. In Roman mythology, the figure of the demon was more linked to the larvae and lemures, who were spirits of the dead who had not found peace. These spirits could appear in the form of shadows, stalking the living and causing nightmares or diseases. The lemur was especially feared, since it was thought that he could possess human beings and alter their mental and physical health. In contrast, the lares and penates were domestic spirits that protected homes and families, a more positive representation of the concept of the demonic. The duality of good and evil. The main difference between gods and demons in Greek and Roman traditions lies in their role in the cosmic order and their relationship with mortals. The gods were responsible for maintaining balance and order in the world, while the demons, for the most part, represented forces that fluctuate between aid and chaos. The gods had the power to intervene directly in human affairs, either to offer guidance and protection or to punish and correct errors. The demons, on the other hand, played a more subtle role, often acting as invisible or intermediaries that guided people through their decisions, without necessarily showing their power directly. In addition, demons could exist in a variety of forms, not always as evil or destructive beings. The idea of the daemons as intermediary beings in the world of mortals reflects the Greek understanding that good and evil were not absolute concepts. Even demons that caused damage sometimes fulfilled a cosmic purpose by maintaining balance or punishing the immoral behavior of humans. This concept of duality in the ancient world is essential to understand how the Greeks and Romans saw the role of divine and demonic forces in their mythology. Everything had a place in the complex fabric of the universe. The influence on subsequent culture. The distinction between gods and demons in ancient Greece and Rome would deeply influence later traditions. Christianity, for example, adopted and transformed many of these ideas, although the divine and demonic figures in the Judeo-Christian tradition came to have a stricter separation between good and evil. In Greek and Roman mythology, demons were not simply evil, but were complex, ambiguous, and often closer to humans in their motivations. This vision would endure in literature, art, and medieval thought, where the struggle between good and evil would become more binary, but still resonating with the complexities of ancient myths. Thus, in the Greek and Roman cultures, the line between the divine and the demonic was not rigid, and the intermediate spirits played an essential role in the cosmology of humanity. The gods, although powerful and venerated, were very human in their emotions and behaviors. The demons, in their many forms, not only represented the forces of darkness, but also the forces that influenced the human destiny in mysterious and sometimes indecipherable ways. Lucifer, the fallen prince, is a fascinating figure in Judeo-Christian mythology, whose history has endured over the centuries as a symbol of rebellion, uprooting, and transformation. In sacred texts, Lucifer is portrayed as a being created by God, endowed with incomparable beauty and wisdom, but also marked by an ambition that would lead him to challenge the divine order. The story of its fall is not explicitly found in a single passage, but is built from several scriptures, mainly in the book of Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Revelation, in addition to the apocryphal texts and the posterior Christian tradition. The angel of light, the beginning of the fall. Lucifer, before his rebellion, was a high-ranking angel, one of the closest to God. His glow was so dazzling that his presence illuminated the sky itself. In many stories, it is described as a being of infinite beauty, possessor of talents and exceptional skills that made him stand out among the other angels. Not only was it beautiful, but it was also wise and fair. Everything in him was designed to glorify God and maintain heavenly order. However, in the glory of its creation, the seed of envy and vanity began to be created. In his brilliant mind, the idea that he could also reign, that his light could eclipse even that of God. The famous event of Isaiah 14 verse 12, "How you fell from heaven, O Lucero, son of the morning," refers to the moment when Lucifer began to question the power and authority of God. Here, in the words of Isaiah, is the first indication of his rebellion to an excessive ambition to achieve power and supremacy. His pride blinded him, leading him to a state of absolute disobedience. He was not willing to be one of God's servants, but wanted to occupy the heavenly throne. This struggle for power, which in his eyes presented himself as a desire for greatness, became the spark that ignited his fall. The heavenly rebellion. Lucifer didn't rebel alone. His arrogance attracted other angels who shared his discontent with the divine order. Together, Lucifer and his followers formed a heavenly army in which they fought against God's forces. In the famous heavenly battle, which appears in Apocalypse 12, 7-9, Los Angeles, loyal to God, headed by the archangel Michael, faced the fallen angels of Lucifer. The struggle was fierce, but in the end, the purity and justice of God prevailed. Lucifer and his followers were defeated and thrown into the abyss, a place of eternal darkness. This act of rebellion not only marks the end of his heavenly reign, but also gives Lucifer his title as the fallen prince. In popular culture and in theological representations, Lucifer is often described as the leader of the forces of evil, the angel who betrayed the light for darkness, the being that fell from divine grace for his desire for absolute power. Lucifer's fall is, in many ways, a symbolism of eternal struggle between good and evil, light and darkness. The fall, the meaning of disobedience. Lucifer's fall is not only a punishment story, but also a lesson in the consequences of disobedience. In his rebellion, Lucifer challenged the divine hierarchy and the authority of God. In his eagerness to reach power, he forgot the role he had to play as a creature and servant of a supreme creator. This act of excessive pride is considered in many traditions such as the root of all sin. Lucifer's story illustrates how pride, when it takes to the extreme, can even corrupt even the most perfect beings. Lucifer, when he falls, not only loses his place in heaven, but he also loses his name. It is no longer the bearer of light, but Satan, the adversary. Lucifer's transformation into Satan symbolizes the alteration of his nature, from an angel of light to a dark being. This transformation, in many stories, is the reflection of how sin, ego, and pride can even corrupt what is originally pure. Symbolism of the fallen prince Lucifer, as a symbol, has been interpreted in various ways throughout history. In a theological sense, its fall represents the danger of disobedience and betrayal of the divine order. In a more philosophical plane, its rebellion can be seen as a representation of the struggle for freedom and individualism, although taken to a destructive extreme. In literature and art, Lucifer has been portrayed as much as a villain as a tragic figure, someone who rebelled for a reason that seemed fair, but whose way of acting condemned him irremediably. In many cultures, Lucifer has been a symbol of the fight against oppression and divine control. His fall, although tragic, has been seen as an act of challenge to an order that he considered unfair. This interpretation has been amplified by writers like John Milton in his famous work Paraiso Lost, where Lucifer, although evil, is presented as a complex figure that the divine authority questions and becomes a symbol of resistance against destiny. Lucifer's legacy has left an indelible brand in Western culture. Its history has been reimagined in many ways, from Christian theology to modern literature, cinema, and music. In all these contexts, Lucifer remains an enigmatic figure, which represents both the tragic fall of a heavenly being and the constant struggle against forces that seek to dominate the human being. His story not only speaks of a fallen angel, but also of the eternal battle between light and darkness, between love and hate, between obedience and rebellion. Lucifer's figure, the fallen prince, is still one of the most powerful and moving in religious mythology. Its history resonates with fear and fascination with power, vanity, and fall, showing how even the highest beings can be lost in the dark if they give in to the ego's wishes. In the depths of the abyss, beyond the limits of human understanding, there is a name that resonates with disobedience and corruption: Belial. A demon that not only represents chaos, but also seduction towards absolute evil, Belial is a disturbing figure that has left an indelible mark on the Judeo-Christian tradition. Its history is not as prominent as that of Lucifer, but its influence and power in the kingdom of darkness are equally terrifying. Belial's mention in biblical texts is brief, but his presence is sinister and deep, like a dark whisper that runs through the pages of the scriptures. In the Old Testament, it is presented as an unscrupulous figure, without respect for divine laws or by the established order. Its name, which comes from the Hebrew word Belial, means without value, perverse, or without principle, which underlines its evil nature and its inability to obey any moral rule. The shadow in the scriptures in the Bible, Belial appears sporadically, but always associated with evil and disobedience. In Deuteronomy's book, 13:13, he is mentioned as a perverse man that encourages the Israelites to worship others. Here, Belial is not a concrete being, but rather a concept, a principle of moral perversion that endangers the purity of faith. The notion of a demonic leader who corrupts and seduces human beings toward sin is represented through their influence. This insidious figure is a constant reminder of human fragility against evil. In the New Testament, the figure of Belial is associated with Satan himself. In 2 Corinthians 6 verse 15, St. Paul writes, "And what concord has Christ with Belial?" This mention indicates the deep aversion between good and evil, symbolizing the total separation between light and darkness. Belial is presented as the opposite of Christ, a force that denies holiness and obedience to God. But Belial is not just a concept in the Bible. Throughout the centuries, the Christian tradition and other currents of thought have made it a concrete being, a demon of great power in the underworld, whose goal is to corrupt the human soul and drag it towards perdition. Disobedience as a way to evil. Belial's essence lies only in his ability to cause chaos, but in his fascinating ability to seduce others through disobedience. It is not simply a being that opposes God, it is a being that promotes insubordination and betrayal of divine authority. His call it is not a brute force, but of cunning, a tempting whisper who promises liberation to those who dare to reject the divine order and follow their own path. In many stories, Belial is described as the demon that mocks heavenly laws, instigating those to reject obedience and seek autonomy through sin. Its appeal lies in its supply of freedom, a freedom that is actually slavery to the darkest passions and desires of the human soul. It is the demon of those who seek to break the chains of morality and embrace chaos in its purest form. Belial in the apocryphal tradition. As the biblical texts expanded, and with the inclusion of apocryphal books, Belial adopted even greater importance. In the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, a Jewish text of the time of the Second Temple is presented to Belial as a prince of demons, the leader of those who seek to corrupt justice and peace. In this context, Belial is more than an abstract concept, it is a figure that embodies the evil, which manipulates people to choose sin and disobedience. In apocryphal texts such as Abraham's Apocalypse, Belial presents himself as the leader of demons that attack humanity, tempting until destruction is inevitable. It is shown as a dangerous being, whose cunning is such that it does not occur directly as an evil force, but is hidden under the appearance of something tempting and pleasant. Belial, a leader in the abyss. In the Lost Paradise of John Milton, Belial is one of the demons that, after the fall of Satan, joins him in the abyss of hell. Milton describes him as a being that, although aware of the hopelessness of his situation, is energetic and persuasive. His role in the rebellion of fallen angels highlights the duality of his nature. He is a leader but also a follower, guiding others towards destruction while feeling trapped in his own condemnation. Milton presents Belial not only as a follower of Satan, but also as a leader who has the ability to inspire others to follow his example. In Lost Paradise, Belial is a character who is more interested in corruption and subversion than in the open war. Instead of fighting, he prefers manipulation, which makes it an even more dangerous figure, the demon of seduction and deception, which attracts souls not strongly, but with promises of immediate and pleasant satisfaction. Belial's influence on popular culture. Over the centuries, Belial has been a central figure in the development of popular culture, especially in literary works and in the representation of evil. His presence in classic texts and their relationship with disobedience have caused him to be associated with rebellion against everything sacred and the betrayal of divine ideals. His image has evolved, but has always maintained its essence as a demon whose power lies in the manipulation and corruption of the human soul. Today, Belial remains an enigmatic figure, which appears in novels, films, and plays, where he is always associated with evil, but also with the questioning of established norms. It is often presented as a figure that offers the characters an escape, a path to an illusory freedom that ultimately destroys them. In summary, Belial is not simply one more demon in the vast infernal pantheon, but a figure that represents the power of disobedience, corruption, and deception. Its history is a gloomy reminder of the consequences of challenging the divine order and how the seduction of evil can lead to total perdition. Beelzebub, known as the Lord of the Flies, is one of the most sinister and powerful figures in the demonic kingdom. His name, which comes from the ancient Phoenician god Beelzebub, has become associated with absolute evil, corruption and chaos. In many cultures, Beelzebub has been considered not only as a demon, but as one of the main entities that govern dark forces. His ascent, his power, and the way in which he has been represented throughout the centuries reflect both human fear of evil and fascination with the forces that compose it. Beelzebub's rise. The origin of Beelzebub dates back to the ancient Phoenicia, where Baal, a god of lightning and the storm, was venerated. However, the name Beelzebub, literally the Lord of the Flies, appears in the Bible as a dark transformation of this deity. Over the centuries, Beelzebub associated with pestilence and decline, elements represented in the flies that infested the bodies. In the Old Testament, it is mentioned that the Philistines worshipped Beelzebub in the city of Ekron, and this veneration was seen as a form of dangerous idolatry, an offense to God. The ascenso de Beelzebub to a demonic figure of great power was consolidated in apocryphal literature and, later, in Christianity, where he began to be considered one of the princes of hell, a high commander under the orders of Satan. Over time, a prominent role in corruption rituals, the domain of pestilence and the spread of evil was attributed. Beelzebub in the Christian Bible and culture. In the Christian tradition, Beelzebub was not only an important demon, but was considered the prince of demons. In the Gospels, Jesus faces the Pharisees, who accuse him of expelling demons with the power of Beelzebub. In Matthew 12 verse 24, it is mentioned, "But when the Pharisees heard this, they said, 'He did not miss the demons, but by Beelzebub, prince of demons.'" Here, a clear distinction is established between Jesus' heavenly powers and the demonic power of Beelzebub, representing the demon not only as an evil entity, but as the leader of a legion of dark beings that fight against good. In the Lost Paradise of John Milton, Beelzebub occupies a place of prominence in the infernal council. Despite its tremendous evil, Beelzebub is presented as a demon that, despite being trapped in the abyss, maintains an air of dignity and power. He and his partner Satan are the architects of the rebellion against God, struggling to undo the divine order. Beelzebub, as one of the main leaders of demons, is cunning and manipulative, willing to make humanity fall. The Lord of the Flies, a symbol of corruption. The epithet Lord of the Flies is loaded with symbology. Flies, which are associated with decomposition, rot and death, represent the corruption that Beelzebub brings. In many cultures, flies are seen as a symbol of decay, since they are attracted to the remains of decomposition bodies. In this way, Beelzebub is not only a demon, but an agent of destruction, corruption, and pestilence that drags human souls towards the abyss. The representation of Beelzebub as the Lord of the Flies is also found in modern literature, where his figure is associated with chaos and moral degeneration. In novels such as The Lord of William Golding Flies, the idea that evil and barbarism are inherent to human nature, a force that is unleashed in the absence of authority and order, is evoked. The allegory of flies is a powerful representation of how evil can proliferate when society falls apart and dark forces take control. Beelzebub in other cultures. Although Beelzebub is better known in the Judeo-Christian tradition, its influence and its dark figure have also transcended other cultures and mythologies. In the Islamic tradition, although Beelzebub is not a prominent figure, some versions of the Quran mention similar demons that spread chaos and rebellion against God. In some texts, the figure of Beelzebub merges with that of Iblis, the leader of the fallen angels who refused to prostrate Adam, and with other demons that work to corrupt humanity. In European medieval folklore, the figure of Beelzebub is also associated with the art of witchcraft and dark magic. It is considered one of the most powerful demons that sorcerers and sorcerers invoke to obtain prohibited power and knowledge. In these stories, Beelzebub is not only a malevolent force, but also a master of manipulation and deception, which offers power in exchange for the loss of the soul. Beelzebub's power and seduction. Beelzebub is not just a demon of destruction. It is a being of great intelligence, cunning and power, capable of manipulating and corrupting those who dare to make a deal with him. His seduction is not direct or violent, but is based on the promise of pleasure, wealth, and power. Those who fall under their influence find it difficult to escape, because Beelzebub offers everything that deepest human desires: yin, control, satisfaction, and the possibility of being divine at the expense of morality and purity. This power of seduction is what makes it one of the most dangerous figures in the demonic pantheon. It is not simply a being of destruction, but also of attraction, a master of deception that knows how to manipulate human hearts. In many legends, Beelzebub appears as a figure that offers power in exchange for the destruction of the soul, dragging people towards eternal condemnation. Through its ascent, its power, and its connection with evil, Beelzebub is established as a figure that not only represents pestilence and corruption, but also the irresistible temptation that leads human beings to perdition. Its name resonates through the centuries, and its influence remains a grim warning of the dangers of giving in to the dark forces that lurk in the shadows. Asmodeus, known as the demon of lust, is one of the most scary and fascinating figures of the demonic pantheon. In the Christian tradition and in several ancient legends, Asmodeus is seen as the personification of uncontrolled desire and the corruption of earthly pleasures. His role as the demon of lust places him in the center of human temptation, where he stands as a destructive force that destroys both the souls and lives of those who fall under their influence. Throughout history, Asmodeus has been associated with vice, depravity, and perversion, elements that intertwine with the very history of mankind. The origin of Asmodeus. The name Asmodeus has its root in the Old Persian Ishma, which means anger or violence. His figure appeared in the Zoroastrian traditions and was absorbed by Judeo-Christian mythology, where he began to be associated with the darkest sins of the human being. In the Old Testament Tobias book, Asmodeus is represented as the demon responsible for the misfortunes that afflict the protagonists, especially the women who married. It is said that Asmodeus killed Sarah's husband, the protagonist, before she could consummate her marriage. In this narrative, the devil presents itself as a vindictive, jealous entity of human love and the purity of the conjugal union. The Bible, although it does not mention Asmodeus frequently, gives it an outstanding place in the fight against human beings. In the scriptures, Asmodeus is associated with the demonic force that corrupts people, dragging them towards the vices of excessive sexual desire and lust. Over time, this demon went from being a character of Persian mythology to a key representative of the dark forces that seek to destroy divine harmony and encourage immorality. Asmodeus in Christianity and popular culture. In the Christian tradition, Asmodeus is one of the 7 princes of hell, each of which represents a capital sin. As a demon of lust, Asmodeus is associated with overflowing sensuality, seduction, and impulse towards carnal pleasures. Lust, under its influence, is not limited to physical attraction, but also becomes an excessive desire for power, wealth, and satisfaction without limits. Christians see it as a symbol of moral decay, which seeks the destruction of purity and holiness that should characterize human life. Asmodeus also appears in various works of medieval Christian literature, where it is presented as a demon that corrupts the minds and hearts of human beings, dragging them into the claws of temptation. In works such as Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, the demon of lust is represented as one of the most powerful and destructive forces that condemn human souls to hell. The demon of lust in literature and legends. Asmodeus legends are a mixture of horror and moral warning. In the Book of Tobias, as already mentioned, Asmodeus is responsible for the death of Sarah's husband, but his story does not end there. In some versions, Asmodeus is represented as a being that constantly seeks to destroy pure love, altering human relationships to turn them into a battlefield where lust and infidelity predominates. His presence symbolizes the insatiable desire that leads to self-destruction, the obsession that drowns the true emotional connection between people. Over the centuries, Asmodeus representations have remained in popular literature, making it one of the best-known demons in medieval and Renaissance legends. In works such as the Satanic Bible of Anton LaVey, Asmodeus is a figure that represents the meat spell, symbolizing the sensual enjoyment and dissolution of social and moral norms. It is the archetype of the devil that corrupts the human will, not through direct violence, but through the soft and pleasant temptation that becomes a deadly trap. The meaning of lust. According to Asmodeus, lust is a central theme in the figure of Asmodeus, and its role as a demon of lust not only has to do with uncontrolled sexual desire. In many representations, Asmodeus personifies the insatiable yearning that is never satisfied, the existential vacuum that is never filled, regardless of how much more is sought. The lust that represents Asmodeus goes beyond physical desire and becomes a metaphor for deep dissatisfaction that consumes those who give in to their impulses. It is the concept that, the more instant gratification and material pleasure pursue, the more empty the individuals feel. In this sense, Asmodeus is not only a demon that encourages flesh, but also a symbol of the lack of spiritual satisfaction that co-induces forgiveness. Those who fall under their influence are trapped in an endless cycle of desire and frustration, unable to find peace or fullness. Asmodeus, in their possession, leaves people trapped in a spiral of dissatisfied desires, where happiness is ephemeral and eternal suffering. Asmodeus in modern culture. Throughout history, the figure of Asmodeus has transcended religion and religious literature to become a central character in popular culture. In films, series, and video games, Asmodeus remains a representation of the demon of lust, a being able to seduce and destroy humans with their fatal appeal. However, in modern culture, its image has evolved. It is often presented as a complex being, sometimes even as a character that awakens sympathy, because its nature is not only that of a simple villain, but that of a force that challenges conventions and the established order. At present, Asmodeus remains an intriguing figure that represents the shadows of human desires, uncontrollable passions that, although they are often pleasant, can drag people towards the abyss. He is the reflection of our internal struggle with the darkest impulses, and its history continues to be a reminder of the dangers that lurk in the darkest corners of the human soul. Gabriel, the angel of revelation, has been an essential figure in several religious traditions throughout history. Known for his role as a divine messenger, Gabriel is the figure that, in key moments, has been the driver between the human and the divine, a sacred link that reveals the mysteries of the divine will to mortals. His presence in scriptures and oral tradition is so significant that he is going through cultures and religions, always as a being that brings knowledge and guide for humanity. Gabriel's figure not only embodies heavenly purity, but also a transformative force, aimed at changing the course of the lives of those who receive their messages. In Christianity, Gabriel is perhaps better known for his appearance in the announcement to the Virgin Mary, a decisive moment in the history of salvation. This angel, who is presented as the messenger of God, not only brings a message, but offers hope to humanity by communicating the birth of Jesus, the Savior. The Virgin Mary, who receives the announcement with humility, becomes the recipient of the divine word, and Gabriel, with her glorious appearance, marks the beginning of a new era in the history of salvation. Gabriel's story, however, does not begin or end with the Virgin Mary. In the Hebrew Bible, Gabriel has an equally important role as the one that interprets visions and dreams. In Daniel's book, for example, Gabriel is the one who reveals the mysteries of the future, providing answers to the most complex questions of the prophets. It is an angel who not only brings the message of the divine will, but also illuminates the path to the deep understanding of the divine designs. Gabriel is presented as a figure of authority and clarity, whose mission is to make divine plans understandable to human beings. In Islam, Gabriel's figure is even more prominent. In the Quran, Jibril, is the angel in charge of conveying the word of God to the Prophet Muhammad. The revelation of the Quran, which was carried out for a period of 23 years, was delivered directly by Gabriel, who appeared to the Prophet in various forms, guiding him and teaching him the verses that would make up the sacred book. In this context, Gabriel is a figure of great importance, not only as a messenger, but as the means by which the last divine revelation for humanity was established. It is a venerated being, considered an instrument of grace and divine knowledge. Gabriel's role, in many of these traditions, is also that of a protector. Its proximity to the people who receive the divine message is not only in terms of communication, but also in terms of spiritual custody. In some representations of medieval Christianity, Gabriel is seen as the guardian angel of humanity, especially in his function of protecting those who are sent with the divine mission. Gabriel's image as a protector is strengthened when it is considered that, in many stories, this angel offers comfort and guides human beings in moments of anguish or uncertainty. In Judaism, Gabriel not only acts as the messenger of God, but also as an executing angel. In Apocryphal and Talmud texts, the ability to carry out divine judgments is attributed, being the angel in charge of punishing those who rebel against God's will. This facet of Gabriel as executor of divine justice highlights his role not only as a transmitter of revelations, but also as a force that maintains order and morals in the world. In many artistic representations, Gabriel is portrayed as a majestic figure, a being with wings that carries with him a trumpet or a lily, symbols of divine announcement and heavenly purity. Its physical presence, often radiant and dazzling, reflects the dignity and holiness of the mission it fulfills. However, beyond its heavenly image, what Gabriel really represents is the direct connection with the divine, the conduit by which the heavenly mysteries communicate to human beings, and the mediator that brings light in times of darkness. Gabriel's story is also a transformation story. Through their interventions, people's life irrevocably changes. In the Christian tradition, her message to the Virgin Mary is not only a revelation, but also an act of transcendence that changes the fate of all humanity. In Islam, the revelation of the Quran through Gabriel transforms the entire world, bringing a new law and guide for believers. In Hebrew mythology, his presence brings understanding, clarity, and the possibility of understanding the designs of a God who, although distant, is close to his people through Los Angeles. Gabriel is not just the angel of revelation, he is also the angel of hope. In his voice the echoes of the divine are heard, bringing mortals the opportunity to transcend, to receive heavenly knowledge and to achieve a deeper connection with the divine. Through their figure, humans have the opportunity to understand that divinity is not separated from humanity, but is close, willing to communicate and offer comfort. Gabriel, in his mission, illuminates the way to understanding and, at the same time, reminds humans of their place in the great cosmic design. San Miguel, the heavenly warrior, is a figure that has resonated over the centuries as the final protector of light against the dark forces. In Christianity, San Miguel is not only an angel, but a being of strength and courage that represents the constant struggle between good and evil. With his raised sword and his look at the enemy, San Miguel has been represented as the leader of the heavenly armies, the commander who guides Los Angeles in the war against Satan and his fallen hosts. His image has been a symbol of hope for those who face adversity, a manifestation that good, although threatened by darkness, always has the power to prevail. The figure of San Miguel appears strongly in the Christian scriptures, especially in the book of Revelation, where his victory over the dragon is described, which symbolizes Satan. In this text, we are presented to San Miguel as the leading angel who, with courage and determination, fights the forces of evil in a heavenly war. And there was war in heaven, Miguel and his angels fought against the dragon, says the passage, beginning the great battle that would define the fate of the spiritual forces. In this war, San Miguel not only acts as a warrior, but also as a protector, a defender of divine justice, and the protector of all who follow the path of light. Miguel's victory is a reminder that, although evil seems omnipresent, there is always a larger force willing to fight for good. His role is not limited to physical struggle, but is also the guardian of souls. San Miguel is considered the angel who guides the righteous to paradise, ensuring that the souls of the faithful reach their eternal destiny in peace. In medieval and Renaissance Christian representations, Miguel is often seen with a balance, symbolizing his role in the final judgment. In this scene, he weighs souls, making sure that good works are rewarded and that the souls of the righteous find their place in the celestial kingdom. His presence becomes a symbol of hope for the faithful, showing that not only struggles in the heavenly war, but also ensures the spiritual destiny of humanity. In the Christian tradition, San Miguel is also the protector of the Church. Throughout history, he has been invoked by Christians in moments of danger and crisis, trusting his ability to defeat the forces of evil that threaten the faith and integrity of the Church. In times of persecution, especially during the dark times of the Middle Ages, it was believed that Miguel was guided the faithful, protecting them from demonic forces and helping them to resist temptation and spiritual destruction. Thus, San Miguel is not only a symbol of struggle, but also of resistance to the evidence and tribulations of life. The figure of San Miguel has been central to Christian iconography. In art, it is often shown with glowing armor, riding a white horse and wielding a sword or spear. The most commonly represented scene is the image of Miguel beating the dragon, a symbol of the defeat of evil, of the purity of good that triumphs over the shadows. The aesthetics of San Miguel transmits a feeling of power, but also of grace. His face is serene, but his gaze is firm and determined. This visual representation reinforces the belief that evil can be defeated, but only by those within a strength and determination to face it. In the prayers and hymns of the Catholic Church, San Miguel is invoked to protect the faithful from the evil forces. One of the best-known prayers is the prayer to San Miguel Archangel, which asks for its intercession to protect the Church and humanity from the attacks of Satan and its followers. San Miguel Archangel, defend us in the struggle, be our protection against the perversity and stalks of the devil, says prayer, underlining the role of San Miguel as defender of good and enemy of evil. This prayer is a reminder that the fight against dark forces is not only a spiritual battle, but also a daily struggle in which believers seek divine protection to stand firm in their faith. San Miguel's struggle against evil is not limited to heavenly battles. His figure also resonates in the daily life of Christians, who see him as a protector against the challenges and evidence of life. In times of doubt, fear, or despair, it is believed that San Miguel intercede, guiding the faithful and helping them overcome the difficulties. It is a symbol of hope and strength, a reminder that we are not alone in our fight against adversities. As a heavenly warrior, San Miguel inspires courage in those who face their own battles, either against spiritual evil, demonic forces, or the challenges of everyday life. In the Christian tradition, San Miguel is not only a war angel, but also a symbol of divine justice and protection. His victory over the dragon represents the final defeat of evil, an evil that will always try to arise, but that can never prevail. Through their figure, Christians are remembered that good, although often seems to be in a minority, always has the power to prevail. San Miguel, the heavenly warrior, continues to be a figure of inspiration, strength, and hope for all those who seek to live in the light of faith. Azazel is a complex figure that unfolds between the shadows of history and mythology, a fallen angel whose name has resonated in different cultures throughout the centuries. In the ancient traditions, Azazel is considered a being of power, but its fall marks the principle of its history in the dark, becoming a symbol of rebellion and disobedience to the divine. The story of Azazel is the story of an angel who disobeyed God and who, like Lucifer, challenged the heavenly order, but did it in a unique way and with consequences that had not only impact on heaven, but also on earth. In Judaism, Azazel appears in the book of Leviticus, where he is mentioned in the context of the scapegoat ritual. In this ritual, 2 goats were selected, one to be sacrificed as an offering to God, and the other, the Azazel goat, was sent to the desert. The legend says that this goat transported the sins of the people on itself, thus carrying Israel's iniquities to Azazel, a being that was in the desert, far from the purity and holiness of humanity. However, this representation of Azazel is not the same as that of a simple demon, rather, he was presented as an intermediary between human sin and divine punishment, a being that took vacuum transgressions. In the Hebrew culture, Azazel was, therefore, a figure that was on the edge between the heavenly and the infernal, stripping humans of their guilt, but at the same time, moving them away from divine purification. With the passage of time, the figure of Azazel was charging other nuances, especially in the apocryphal texts. In the Enoch book, a text that is not included in the biblical fee, Azazel is presented as one of the fallen angels, a being that, along with other angels, descended to the earth to teach humans forbidden arts. Azazel is particularly associated with the teaching of metallurgy, magic and dark arts. It is said that it was he who taught men to make weapons and use the arts of war, which allowed them to unleash endless violence. Thus, Azazel is not only guilty of corrupting humanity by teaching them the secrets that should have been reserved, but also becomes a symbol of the fall of Los Angeles as agents of evil. Throughout history, Azazel's influence has transcended beyond Judaism and has been absorbed by other cultures and religions. In Christianity, although his figure is not as prominent as that of Lucifer, Azazel is associated with evil forces, being considered one of the most powerful and feared demons. In some texts, such as the Apocryphal of Moses, Azazel is described as a demon leader, the commander of the infernal hosts fighting against the celestial forces. Throughout the centuries, his name has been invoked in occult rituals and black magic, where he is attributed power over war, destruction, and uncontrollable forces of nature. But Azazel's influence is not limited to darkness and evil. In some cultures, especially in esotericism and modern mysticism, Azazel is seen as a figure of power and liberation. The occultists often consider it a being that, although fallen, has a deep knowledge of the secrets of the universe. For them, Azazel is not only a fallen angel, but a figure that, by rebelling against the divine authority, reached a form of freedom that other angels did not know. In these circles, Azazel looks like a symbol of the struggle for knowledge and autonomy against a divine tax order, a rebellion that, although condemned, is seen as a sample of courage and challenge before the established norms. As Azazel moves through the ages, his story is mixed with other traditions, adopting new meanings and becoming a figure that, although feared, is also venerated. In Islamic mythology, although Azazel is not directly mentioned, it is associated with Iblis, the fallen angel who refused to prostrate Adam. In some stories, Azazel and Iblis are considered the same entity, both examples of disobedience and the challenge to divine will. This interpretation emphasizes even more the idea that Azazel is an angel who rebelled, not only against the heavenly authority, but against the very concept of what good and evil is. The symbolism of Azazel, throughout all these traditions, remains anchored in the notion of disobedience. His name is inscribed in the history of fallen angels, those beings who, in their pride, depart from the right path, challenging God and, with it, bringing darkness to the world. However, Azazel is not only an emblem of corruption and sin, but also a figure that reflects the complexity of spiritual existence. In its fall, we are not only shown the fragility of obedience, but also the eternal struggle between freedom and subordination. At present, Azazel remains a symbol of rebellion, of the struggle for power and prohibited knowledge. In popular culture, its figure has become one of the most intriguing and disconcerting, and its history continues to feed the collective imaginary of those who seek to understand the depths of darkness and light. Azazel, the fallen angel, remains a fascinating figure, whose influence is still alive in the legends and myths, where there will always be space for those who dare to challenge the divine, even with a price that, in the end, always seems to be more tall of what he imagined. Lilith, the figure of the Queen of Demons, is one of the most fascinating and complex characters within mythology and religion, whose origin dates back to ancient times and whose influence has permeated diverse cultures throughout history. Often considered a rebel, dangerous and seductive figure, Lilith has been seen in many ways, but its story has always been involved in mystery and contradiction. It has been associated with both evil and female independence and strength, becoming a symbol of power and subversion to established norms. Lilith's first mention is found in Mesopotamian mythology, where he appears in Sumerian and Akkad texts such as a demon or night spirit. In these first stories, Lilith was a being that stalked during the night, looking for men while they slept. His presence was linked to diseases, especially fever and sleep disorders. In some traditions, it was considered a demon that attacked women who gave birth, taking newborns or cursing them with diseases. His figure was associated with darkness, danger, and unknown, representing what many feared of the hidden and the uncontrollable. However, Lilith was not always a purely evil being. In the Ben Sira alphabet, a Jewish medieval text is presented to Lilith as Adam's first wife, created from the same land as him, without being subordinated. This story offers a completely different vision of Lilith, transforming it into a symbol of independence and feminism. Unlike Eva, who according to the Bible was created from Adam's rib, Lilith was conceived to be her equal. However, his rebel nature and his refusal to undergo Adam led to his banishment from Eden. Lilith, disobeying the divine orders and rejecting her subordinate role, fled the Eden and entered into the dark, where she began her reign as a demon. This myth underlines its autonomy and its fight against male and divine domination. Lilith's story expanded beyond the borders of Judaism and joined other traditions. In medieval Christianity, for example, it was associated with witches and women who practiced magic. Often, it was portrayed as a figure of temptation and corruption, the mother of demons and the seductive who took advantage of men to drag them to sin. His image as the Queen of Demons was reinforced by his link with chaos and subversion, representing the dark side of femininity, one that defies the established norms. In Islamic mythology, Lilith also plays a role, although it is not explicitly mentioned in the Quran. However, some later Islamic traditions present Lilith as a created being before Eva, a fallen angel or a demonic being. Its history, although it is not central in Islam, is part of the beliefs about the supernatural creatures that exist outside of divine order, such as the jinn, and that are often associated with temptation and evil. Islamic tradition also links it to rebellion and challenge to authority, attributes that make it a complex figure and reflect the struggle for power and control. Throughout the centuries, Lilith has transcended religious borders and has been adopted in popular culture, especially in the modern feminist movement, where it is seen as a symbol of resistance, strength, and feminine autonomy. In these contemporary representations, Lilith is no longer seen as the Queen of Demons, but as a figure of empowerment, which rejects submission and oppression. Her story has been reinterpreted by women who see her as a model of freedom, autonomy, and power over her own destiny. Lilith, in this context, becomes an icon of rebellion against patriarchal structures and a symbol of the struggle for personal independence. The Queen of Demons, as is known in many stories, has also become a fascinating figure in literature, art, and cinema. His image of seductive and powerful woman has been explored in multiple forms, from Gothic literature to horror movies, where she is portrayed as a dangerous creature, but also as a romantic and tragic figure. Lilith's duality as a figure that can be both feared and admired makes it a deeply complex and captivating character. Its influence on culture and thought remains relevant today. In the field of psychology and esotericism, Lilith represents the repressed aspects of the human psyche, those desires and shadows that society often considers unacceptable. It is seen as the representation of the darkest part of the human being, the part that challenges the norms and that faces the authority, whether divine or human. At the same time, Lilith also symbolizes the capacity for transformation and renewal, showing how rejection and rebellion can lead to personal reinvention. Lilith is, without a doubt, an enigma of mythology, a figure that embodies the struggle for independence, temptation, challenge, and feminine power. Through the centuries, its history has been reinterpreted and adapted to social, cultural, and religious changes. In each of those reinterpretations, it has maintained its essence as a figure of rebellion and strength, one that continues to inspire both fear and admiration. Astaroth, known as one of the most powerful princes of hell, is a complex and mysterious figure in demonology, whose history has been woven over centuries, linked to religious, esoteric, and mythological traditions. Throughout the different cultures and texts, Astaroth has been interpreted in various ways, but has always maintained an imposing presence as a being associated with evil, deception, and power. The origin of Astaroth is found in the ancient Semitic cultures, where it was worshipped as a female deity linked to fertility and war. His name derives from Astarte, a main goddess in the Phoenician pantheon, known in Canaan and Babylonian cultures as the goddess of love, sexuality, and war. In these ancient times, Astarte was venerated for its ability to offer protection, fertility, and victory on the battlefield. However, over the centuries, his figure was increasingly associated with negative aspects, especially in monotheistic religious traditions, where he was rejected and transformed into the figure of Astaroth, the demon. In the medieval Christian demonology, Astaroth appears as an infernal being, a prince of hell who occupies a prominent place among demons. He is described as a wise and scholarly demon, capable of giving secret knowledge to those who invoke him, but always with a price. It is one of the main demons in the Dictionnaire Infernal by Colin de Plancy and in the Lemegton, a medieval Grimurio, where he is presented as one of the main dukes of hell, with a high range in the demonic hierarchy. His influence is vast, and his power over human minds is one of his most feared features. Astaroth, in many of the representations of demonology, is considered a demon that seduces souls through deception and temptation. It is said that it has the ability to make people fall into greed, vanity, and moral corruption. His most feared art is that of intellectual manipulation, the power to convince people that what they're doing is fine, even if their actions are completely perverse. In this sense, Astaroth is a demon who plays with the weaknesses of the human mind, attracting those who seek power and knowledge, but always with the intention of corrupting. The physical appearance of Astaroth, according to medieval descriptions, is equally scary and fascinating. It is commonly presented as a male figure, with a large beard and a serious and wise countenance. Sometimes he is shown riding a beast or a dragon, a representation of his dominance over evil and infernal creatures. His face, however, is that of a scholarly man, who underlines his cunning and manipulative nature. In some representations, Astaroth also carries a crown, which highlights its high range in the demonic hierarchy, as if it were a prince who governs from the shadows. Astaroth is not only a demon that corrupts and manipulates, but is also one that offers power in invocation rituals. He is known for his ability to grant hidden wisdom, secret knowledge, and magical skills. Those who dare to invoke their name often do so in search of personal power, wishing to understand the mysteries of the universe or obtain wealth and fame. However, the price for this knowledge and power is always the eternal conviction, since once someone accepts the offer of Astaroth, their soul is trapped in a link that cannot be broken. In the esoteric tradition, Astaroth is one of the most prominent demons in the rituals of black magic and occultism. It is a being that appears in the circles of alchemy, astrology, and ceremonial magic, offering both knowledge about hidden arts and access to supernatural power dimensions. He is often invoked in dark ceremonies, in which practitioners seek not only power, but also absolute control over their destiny. However, it is warned about the consequences of invoking Astaroth. Those looking for their favors must pay the price with their soul. Astaroth's symbolism is deep and multifaceted. In many cases, his figure represents the internal struggle between human ambition and morality. His power over the intellect and the human mind makes him a figure that is not only physically or emotionally terrifying, but also psychologically invasive. It is associated with the temptation to achieve forbidden knowledge, and its history reflects the human desire to transcend natural limitations, although often at the expense of perdition. Although the image of Astaroth has been mainly that of a demon in Western culture, its figure has transcended the borders of Christianity and has influenced other belief systems. In ritual magic and contemporary occultism, Astaroth sometimes looks like a symbol of hidden power and self-understanding, a reminder of the forces that lurk in the depths of the human psyche. In these contexts, less an evil entity is considered and more a representation of the dark aspects of personality and human desire. Astaroth, the infernal prince, is more than a demon in religious tradition. It is a reflection of the deepest shadows of humanity, a figure that has been shaped by history and beliefs over the centuries. With its mixture of prohibited wisdom, destructive power, and irresistible temptation, it remains one of the most fascinating and feared figures in demonology. Samyaza, the name that resonates with a dark weight and a prohibited echo in ancient scriptures, was the leader of the guards, those fallen angels who challenged the divine law and changed the course of humanity forever. His story, gathering strongly in the Book of Enoch, tells us about rebellion, desire, and eternal consequences. Samyaza is not simply a name, it is the symbol of a heavenly betrayal that left indelible traces in sacred history and in the nightmares of men. Samyaza, also known as Shemahaza, was the commander of a group of angels sent by God to monitor humanity, a mission that gave them the title of vigilantes. These creatures were not mere winged messengers, but guardians, observers in charge of protecting and guiding humans on their way to good. However, the proximity to mortals aroused something that should never have been, a desire that dragged them towards perdition. According to Enoch's book, the beauty of the daughters of men became an irresistible temptation for the guards. It was Samyaza who took the lead, inciting the other angels to join forces in a dark pact. He, aware of the severity of sin that were about to commit, warned them that divine punishment would be implacable. But Samyaza also knew that the desire that burned in their hearts was stronger than any heavenly warning. It was he who told them, "If I sin, I will be punished alone. Let's make this oath together so that we all share the same fate." And thus, united by the fire of the rebellion, they sealed their pact in Mount Hermon, swearing to disobey the Creator. The sin that followed was both physical and spiritual. The guards descended from the sky and took human women by wives, engendering a hybrid race known as the Nephilim, giants of incomparable strength and evil. These beings, children of a prohibited union, unleashed chaos in the world, corrupted divine creation and leading humanity to an abyss of violence and destruction. Samyaza not only led this rebellion, it was the one who taught secret humans that they were not destined for them. Under their command, the guards shared hidden knowledge and prohibited arts. Samyaza taught sorcery and enchantments, while other guards introduced metallurgy, weapons of war, cosmetics, and astrology. What should be a tool for good became a weapon for corruption, taking the world to an imbalance that could not be ignored. The influence of Samyaza and the vigilantes spread like a poison, and his rebellion caused a divine reaction that changed forever the relationship between heaven and earth. God, enraged by the betrayal and pollution of his creation, ordered the archangel Miguel to gather the guards to judge them. Samyaza, who had led the rebellion with pride, now faced the weight of his decision. According to the scriptures, the guards were chained and thrown to the depths of the earth, convicted of waiting for the final judgment in an abyss of darkness and despair. The punishment of the guards did not stop the chaos they had unleashed. The Nephilim, although mortal, continued to sow terror until the flood arrived to erase their fingerprints from the face of the earth. However, Samyaza's lessons and his were not forgotten. Humanity, having tried the fruit of prohibited knowledge, could not go back. The secrets that the guards revealed remained in the world, marking the story with their dark and ambivalent influence. The figure of Samyaza is fascinating precisely because it embodies a moral ambiguity that transcends the simple classification of good or bad. He was a heavenly being, created to protect and guide, but succumbed to desire and arrogance, becoming a symbol of the fall and the price of prohibited knowledge. Its history raises deep questions about the nature of power, temptation, and responsibility. Did the gods seek to free humanity from their ignorance, or simply use mortals as pawns in their own rebellion? Was Samyaza a tragic hero who challenged the unfair rules, or a villain who condemned both his race and humans? Subsequent cultures and traditions collected the history of Samyaza and the gods, adapting it to their own contexts. In Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, its history is used as a warning against abuse of power and knowledge. In apocryphal literature and esoteric tradition, he is portrayed as a figure that ranges between condemnation and compassion, a reminder of the complexities of the free will. Even today, the name of Samyaza evokes a feeling of mystery and fear. Its history is not only that of a fallen angel, but also that of a humanity that, since the dawn of the times, has fought with the desire to understand the incomprehensible, to achieve the unattainable, although that means risking everything. The echoes of their rebellion still resonate, not only in the ancient writings, but also in the decisions and dilemmas we face every day, reminding us that each act of challenge, each search for knowledge, carries a price. Leviathan, a creature whose name evokes fear and fascination, has been described as a monster that lives in the unfathomable depths of the ocean. Its presence in biblical and mythological texts has unleashed the imagination of generations, making it a symbol of chaos, unleashed power, and mystery. In the darkness of marine abyss, where sunlight never reaches, Leviathan reigns as a primary, uncontrollable, and indomitable force. In the Bible, Leviathan appears in several passages that reflect its fearsome nature and its connection with primal chaos. In Job's book, chapter 41, a description that Shuds is offered, a being whose scales are impenetrable, whose breath burns the air, and whose strength is so colossal that no man can tame it. Who can open the doors of his mouth, surrounded by terrifying teeth? His back is a row of closed shields with each other, sealed so firmly that not even the air can pass between them. These words not only describe a beast, but a symbol of what is beyond human control, a threat that lives in the margins of creation. The biblical interpretation of Leviathan often associates it with evil and chaos, but also with the supreme power of God. In the story of Psalm 74, Leviathan is defeated by the Creator, who broke the heads of the Leviathan and offered his flesh as food for desert creatures. Here, Leviathan not only represents chaos, but also the triumph of the divine order over the forces that threaten the harmony of the universe. It is a creature whose purpose seems to be to show the absolute sovereignty of God, who controls even the most indomitable. But Leviathan does not belong solely to the Judeo-Christian tradition. In Canaan mythology, it is found under the name of Lotan, a seven-headed dragon associated with marine chaos and the enemy of the bull god. The struggle between Baal and Lotan is an echo of the eternal battle between order and chaos, a narrative that crosses cultures and times. This Canaanite story, although older, keeps surprising parallels with the biblical Leviathan, suggesting a cultural exchange and a reworking of myths shared by the peoples of the Old East. In the medieval tradition, Leviathan becomes more than a monster. The demonological texts identify him as one of the great demons of hell, a prince who represents envy and pride. He is considered the guardian of the infernal oceans, a being that attracts souls towards condemnation, entangling them in his voracious appetite. In this interpretation, Leviathan not only symbolizes physical chaos, but also spiritual corruption, the insatiable hunger that consumes everything in its path. The English writer and poet John Milton, in his epic work El Paraíso Lost, describes Leviathan as an immense figure that floats in the primary chaos, a being that embodies the vastness and terror of the unknown. In this context, Leviathan is both a creature and a concept, a representation of human fear of the immense, the incomprehensible, and the uncontrollable. Beyond religious and literary texts, Leviathan has left his mark on popular legends. The sailors of antiquity spoke of marine monsters that stalked in deep waters, and Leviathan became a symbol of those fears. In a world where oceans were unexplored territories and full of dangers, Leviathan personified everything that men could not understand or dominate. Each fierce storm, every dark shadow underwater, was a reminder of its possible presence. Leviathan's iconography has also evolved over time. In medieval art, he was represented as a dragon or a gigantic marine snake, often intertwined in combat with saints or divine heroes. These images reflect not only their destructive power, but also the constant struggle between good and evil, between the divine order and the primary chaos. In the contemporary context, Leviathan continues to captivate. Its name has been used in philosophy, literature, and even in science, to represent concepts that range from absolute political power, as in the work of Thomas Hobbes, to the hidden forces of nature. Leviathan is no longer just a monster, it is an idea, a symbol that transcends the barriers of time and culture. However, despite all stories and symbolisms, Leviathan remains wrapped in a mystery mantle. Is it simply a reflection of human fears, a personification of chaos and the unknown? Or does it really exist, hidden in the depths of an ocean that still keeps its secrets? The Leviathan, in its vastness and power, seems to whisper from the dark waters, reminding us that there are things that we can never fully understand, forces that remain out of our reach, waiting, observing. Metatron, a figure wrapped in mystery and reverence, is considered by many as the supreme angel, an celestial scribe and the bridge between the divine and the human. His name, pronounced solemnity, does not appear in the canonical biblical texts, but resonates strongly in the mystical traditions of Judaism, particularly in the Kabbal and Apocryphal texts. This angel, surrounded by an incandescent aura of light, is more than a simple messenger. He is the guardian of divine knowledge, the scribe of the universe, he who has the privilege of being closer to the Creator. In Jewish mystical literature, Metatron occupies a unique place. His name is mentioned in texts such as Sefer Hegilot, the Book of the Palaces, and in the Zohar, where he is described as the angel who sits on the heavenly throne right next to God. This privileged position, unattainable for any other angel, distinguishes it as a figure of power and divine authority. He is the mediator between the infinite and the mortal, in charge of registering the actions of humanity and dictating the heavenly decrees. In some texts, he is even given the title of the Little Yahweh, a name that underlines his proximity to God, although he never matches it. But who is Metatron, and how came to occupy such an exalted place? One of the most moving stories about their origin comes from the Talmud and the subsequent mystical texts, which identify with Enoch, the patriarch of humanity described in Genesis. According to these stories, Enoch, known for his mercy and absolute devotion, was taken to heaven by God without experiencing death, as mentioned in Genesis 5 verse 24, and Enoch walked with God, and disappeared, because God took him. Once in heaven, Enoch was transformed into the Metatron angel, covered with 36 wings and adorned with thousands of glowing eyes that reflect the divine glory. This transformation is not simply an award to its virtue, it is a declaration of the intimate relationship between man and God. Metatron becomes a reminder that the human can transcend the earthly and touch the divine, even for an extraordinary act of grace. However, this closeness with God also brings an immense weight. Metatron not only observes and records, but also has the responsibility of connecting two worlds that rarely cross. Metatron's figure is deeply linked to the knowledge and power of the written word. As heavenly rights, the task of maintaining the eternal registration of human actions is attributed, registering each act, thought, and emotion in the divine annals. In Sefer Hegilot, it is said that Metatron has access to the deepest secrets of the universe, including the true meaning of creation and the mysteries that transcend human understanding. It is he who supervises the delivery of these secrets to the prophets and the wise, acting as the channel through which divine knowledge flows to the world. But Metatron is not just a being of light and knowledge. It is also a warrior when the occasion demands it. In the Kabbal, he is described as the leader of the heavenly hosts, a supreme commander who guides the angels in cosmic battles against chaos and dark forces. Although its main task is mediation and registration, it does not hesitate to raise your sword of fire when the balance of the cosmos is in danger. In the mystical tradition, it is said that Metatron is the guardian of the doors of heaven and the manager of the celestial staircase that unites the earthly world with the divine. This staircase, which remembers Jacob's vision in Bethel, symbolizes the connection between the human and the sacred, a bridge that can only be crossed under its surveillance. Those who seek to approach God must first go through Metatron, who evaluates the purity of their intentions and their spiritual preparation. Metatron symbolism is not limited to Judaism. In esoteric and occultist traditions, his figure is associated with the balance between heaven and earth, between good and evil, and between the known and the unknown. Its name, whose linguistic origin remains an enigma, has been interpreted in various ways, but many believe that it is related to the Greek words goal, beyond, and thrones, throne, which suggests its position beyond of the throne of God. Despite its exalted position, Metatron is also a figure of humility and service. It does not act by its own will, but as a perfect reflection of the divine will. In this sense, it is the ideal model of obedience and devotion, a reminder that even those that occupy the highest places in the celestial hierarchy are subject to the supreme power and wisdom of God. The presence of Metatron in the spiritual narrative is both a source of comfort and in amazement. His role as divine intermediary offers the hope that there is someone who understands the complexities of human experience and presents them before God with compassion. At the same time, your immense authority and power remind us of the vastness of the cosmos and our smallness in the face of the infinite. In the darkness of the night, when the questions about the purpose and destiny torment us, it is impossible not to imagine Metatron writing tirelessly in his heavenly book, registering our struggles and achievements, our hopes and fears. Its pen, moved by a purpose that transcends our understanding, inscribes our lives in the eternal tissue of creation, ensuring that nothing, not even the smallest, is lost in oblivion. Samhael, the angel of death. The name Samhael resonates with an aura of mystery and controversy in religious and esoteric traditions. Considered both an angel and a demon, Samhael is at the intersection between life and death, justice and severity, and the divine and the dark. He is known as the angel of death, the executor of the divine will, and in some traditions, even as the tempting and adversary. His figure, deeply complex, embodies the duality inherent to the universe, creation and destruction, mercy and judgment. The name Samhael can be translated as poison of God or severity of God, depending on etymological interpretation. This ambiguity reflects its dual nature. Samhael does not act for his own malice, but as an agent of the divine will, carrying out the most difficult and often feared functions, the separation of the souls of the bodies and the application of justice. In the Kabbalistic tradition, Samhael is associated with the Pilar de la Severity, Javura, one of the aspects of the Tree of Life. It represents the rigorous judgment necessary to maintain the cosmic balance. However, its connection with severity also links it to the dark side of the tree, the Qliphoth, where overwhelmed and not controlled energy can become destructive. In the Jewish tradition, Samhael appears in several apocryphal texts, Midrashim and in the Kabbalah. It is described as the angel that fulfills the function of heavenly accuser, similar to Satan in some contexts. He is the adversary, but not necessarily an enemy of God, but a prosecutor who presents the transgressions of humanity before the heavenly court. In this role, Samhael is an indispensable figure for divine justice. Samhael is also known as the angel of death in the Talmud. According to tradition, he is in charge of collecting the souls of mortals when his time comes, a task that meets cold impartiality. In some stories, Samhael carries with him an poisoned sword, with which he cuts the thread of life and releases the soul of the body. However, this action is not carried out by cruelty, but as part of the divine plan for the transition of the soul to the beyond. In the Midrash Conan, Samhael is identified as the angel who descended to the Garden of Eden to tempt Eve and cause the fall of humanity. This reinforces its role as an adversary and tempting, but also as an agent that allows the fulfillment of the divine destiny. In some esoteric traditions, Samhael is linked to Lilith, the queen of demons. Together, they form a couple that symbolizes the dark side of creation, chaos, temptation, and rupture of the divine order. Lilith, Adam's first wife according to Midrashic tradition, represents rebellion, while Samhael is the executor of divine justice. This union has been interpreted as a necessary balance between the forces of creation and destruction. Samhael's connection with Lilith also associates it with desire and temptation, aspects that place it on the boundary between heaven and hell, between good and evil. In the Zohar, Samhael and Lilith are described as rulers of the Qliphoth, the kingdom of the shells, where impure and unbalanced energies inhabit. In his role as an angel of death, Samhael has the task of separating the souls from the bodies when the time designated by God comes. This act, although feared by mortals, is seen as a necessary function for the cycle of life. Samhael does not make decisions on his own, it acts under the direct orders of the Creator. Samhael's Kabbalistic vision highlights that it is not inherently malignant, but a reflection of severity and judgment that complement divine mercy. Just as a gardener pruning a plant so that it can grow stronger, Samul fulfills its function of cutting life so that the soul can continue its spiritual journey. In the Jewish tradition, it is said that Samul is able to discern the exact moment in which a person must die, without any possibility of error. In some stories, when Moses mounted to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, Samul tried to avoid his ascent, arguing that no mortal should have access to divine knowledge. This episode underlines its role as guardian and protector of the heavenly mysteries. In the Kabbalah, Samul is a deep figure symbolic amant. It is seen as a door guard who separates the earthly from the divine, as well as an adversary that proves the spiritual resistance of souls. In the Zohar, it is mentioned that Samul is at the service of God and that his actions, although severe, are part of the cosmic balance. He is also associated with the fifth Sephir, Gevura, severity, in the Tree of Life. In this context, Samul represents the necessary force to destroy what is corrupted and protect the sacred. However, its connection with the Qliphoth also links it to chaos, showing that its power can be dangerous if it is not balanced. Although Samul is a figure mainly associated with Judaism, it also has parallels in other traditions. In Christianity, his role as a heavenly accuser resembles that of Satan, who is described as the adversary in Job's book. However, Christianity usually separates the angels of evil more clearly. In Islam, the closest equivalent could be Azrael, the angel of death, who also fulfills the function of separating the souls from the bodies. However, Samul does not explicitly appear in Islamic texts, suggesting that his figure is unique in Judeo, Christian, and mystical traditions. Samul, the angel of death, is a figure of deep complexity. It represents the severity, justice, and balance necessary for the functioning of the universe. Although it is often seen with fear, its role is essential for the divine order. His duality as an accuser and executor makes it a powerful symbol of the mysteries of life, death, and judgment. In the darkness of existence, Samul reminds us that even the most feared forces have a divine purpose, and that in the cycle of life and death, there is a design that transcends our understanding. Throughout history, hell has been conceptualized in various ways in the religions, mythologies, and cultures of the world. This concept, which transcends borders, represents a place where sinners are punished, but also, in some cases, where souls can find redemption or purification. Although interpretations vary, hell usually personifies human fear of eternal suffering and punishment for earthly transgressions. At the same time, in certain traditions, it is presented as a state of transformation, an opportunity for repentance and redemption. In Judaism, hell is not a place of eternal torment as in other traditions, but a temporal space known as Gehenna, Gehinnom. This term derives from the Hinnom Valley, a historical place associated with human sacrifices in ancient times. In the Jewish tradition, Gehenna is where impure souls spend a period of purification before reaching Olam Haba, the coming world, or facing definitive destruction. This process, which generally lasts no more than 12 months, emphasizes divine mercy and the opportunity for repentance. Christianity adopts a more explicit and detailed vision of hell as a place of eternal punishment for impenitent sinners. In the New Testament, Jesus repeatedly mentions the eternal fire and the crew of teeth as images of hell, Matthew 25 verse 41. The parents of the Church, such as St. Augustine, developed the idea of hell as a state of complete separation of God, symbolized by the inextinguishable fire and the eternal torment. In Catholic theology, hell is distinguished from purgatory, a temporal state where souls can purify before reaching sky. On the other hand, some Protestant denominations focus more on hell as an irreversible state of condemnation for those who reject God. In Islam, hell is known as Jahannam, a place of punishment for sinners and infidels. The Quran describes Jahannam as a place of abrasing flames, boiling water, and physical and psychological torments. However, in some interpretations, the punishment in Jahannam is not always eternal. Muslim souls can eventually be released after having at once. Islam also offers a dual vision of judgment, where each individual faces a balance of their good and bad actions, which determines whether their final destination will be paradise, Jannah, or hell, Jahannam. In Hinduism, the concept of hell is known as Naraka, a kingdom governed by Yama, the god of death. Naraka is not eternal, it is a place where souls pay for their bad actions before being reincarnated in a new body. Naraka's descriptions vary, but it is said that it has multiple levels, each associated with specific punishments for different sins. Hinduism emphasizes karma as the main determinant of the destiny of the soul, and the pastime in Naraka is directly related to the bad actions committed in the previous life. Once the karma has balanced, the soul can reincarnate in a new life cycle. In Buddhism, hell is a temporary state within the Renaissance cycle, samsara. It is known as the infernal kingdoms, narakas, which are described as places of extreme suffering. There are multiple levels of hells, both hot and cold, where souls experience specific torments based on their bad actions. However, unlike the Abrahamic concept, suffering in Buddhist hell is not eternal. Once the negative karma is exhausted, the soul is reborn in another kingdom of existence. This reflects the Buddhist vision that hell is a stage in the process of learning and spiritual redemption. Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, the underworld, governed by Hades, includes the Tartar, a place reserved for the most serious sinners, such as the Titans and the enemies of the gods. The Tartar is described as a dark and deep abyss, where the convicted suffer personalized punishments for their crimes. However, not all the underworld is synonymous with suffering. Places such as the Elysian Fields represent the destiny of the heroes and the virtuous, while the Asphodelo is a neutral region for common souls. In Nordic mythology, Helheim is the kingdom of the dead governed by the goddess Hel. Unlike Abrahamic concepts, Helheim is not a place of eternal punishment, but simply the fate of those who did not die in battle. On the other hand, Niflheim, an icy and dark kingdom, is sometimes associated with a type of hell where desolation and suffering reigns. These representations reflect Nordic belief in a post-mortem destination linked to the actions and circumstances of life. Throughout the centuries, hell has inspired writers, artists, and theologians. Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy presents one of the most detailed and influential descriptions of hell, divided into 9 circles, each representing a capital sin and its corresponding punishment. In modern popular culture, hell is often represented as an infernal place, full of flames, demons, and torture, largely influenced by medieval Christian vision. Beyond literal interpretations, hell has also been understood as a mental or emotional state. In many mystical traditions, hell symbolizes the internal suffering caused by the separation of the divine or by the inability to overcome their own spiritual limitations. Hell, in its multiple representations, reflects the concerns and hopes of humanity about life after death. Be it a place of eternal punishment, temporary purification, or spiritual transformation, hell confronts us with the consequences of our actions and the possibility of redemption. This diversity of perspectives invites us to reflect on the ethical, spiritual, and cultural values that shape our understanding of the final destination. During the Middle Ages, demons played a central role in visual and literary imagination. In addition, demons in medieval art drank from previous sources, such as Greco-Roman traditions and European popular legends. These influences helped enrich and diversify the way these creatures were represented. In churches and monasteries, frescoes and tempering paintings frequently showed demons such as grotesque and deformed figures. These representations appeared especially in scenes of the final judgment, where demons tormented the condemned souls. In Giotto's Final Judgment in the Scrovegni Chapel, 14th century, demons are twisted, dark-colored figures, which snatch souls towards the mouth of hell. The enlightened manuscripts, such as the Codex Gigas, also known as the Devil's Bible, have demons with animal features, such as claws, horns and queues, designed to cause fear. Gothic altarpieces often included visions of the Iron Fire where demons inflicted specific punishments according to sins committed. These works acted as visual reminders of divine justice and the need for regret. For example, in the works of Hieronymus Bosch, such as the Garden of Delights, 15th century, demons are represented as hybrid creatures, combinations of humans and animals, in scenes loaded with symbolism and chaos. The gargoyles of the Gothic cathedrals are one of the most iconic demons in medieval sculpture. These grotesque figures, which often combined human, animals and monstrous characteristics, had a double purpose: serve as water drains to protect the walls of the cathedral. Remember the faithful the dangers of sin and the omnipresence of evil forces. Notre Dame cathedrals in Paris and Chartres in France are notable examples of gargoyles representing demonic figures in terrifying or mocking poses. In the capitals and friezes of the medieval churches, demons were used to tell biblical stories or moral warnings. The sculptors represented demons dragging sinners into hell or participating in divine judgments. An outstanding example is found in the western porch of the Autun Cathedral, France, where demons weigh souls in the final judgment scene, a masterpiece of the sculptor Gislebertus. In literature, Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, 14th century, is one of the most influential texts in the representation of demons. In hell, Dante describes demons as guardians of the infernal circles, each in charge of punishing a specific sin. Malacoda and the other demons of the fifth circle are examples of how Dante combined grotesque and comic elements to give life to these creatures. Santos's stories, such as the lives of San Antonio and San Benito, often include meetings with demons that try to divert the saints of their spiritual path. These stories emphasized the victory of virtue over evil forces. The medieval bestiaries, collections of real and fantastic creatures, also presented demons in hybrid forms, associating them with animals considered impure, such as snakes, goats, and bats. During the Romanesque period, 11th to 13th centuries, demons were represented more simple and stylized, with thick lines and rigid shapes. However, with the boom of the Gothic style, 13th to 15th centuries, demons' representations became more complex and detailed, reflecting a growing interest in anatomy and symbolism. As the Middle Ages gave way to the Renaissance, the focus on demons began to change. Although they continued to appear in art, their representation became more sophisticated, less grotesque, and sometimes even attractive, as a reflection of the transition to a more humanistic vision. The representation of demons in medieval art was a powerful tool to transmit religious, moral, and cultural messages. These images, grotesque and terrifying, fulfilled the purpose of strengthening faith, warning about the consequences of sin, and remembering the constant struggle between good and evil. At the same time, creativity and symbolism inherent to these works continue to fascinate the modern world, offering a window to the rich spiritual and artistic imaginary of the Middle Ages. The conflict between angels and demons, as personifications of good and evil, has been a central theme in religious literature since the first civilizations. This duality has served to explain the moral dilemmas, the internal struggle of the human being, and the fate of souls. From the sacred writings to the apocryphal texts and the theological stories, the religious authors have used angels and demons to illustrate the spiritual values and the consequences of human elections. One of the most influential sources in the narration of the conflict between angels and demons. The angels appear as divine messengers, protectors, and warriors at the service of God, while demons are the enemies of humanity, led by Lucifer, the fallen angel. In the Old Testament, the conflict between good and evil is implicit in stories such as the expulsion of Adam and Eve, where the snake, seen as a manifestation of evil, tempts humanity. In the New Testament, the conflict is more explicit, with Jesus facing Satan in the desert, Matthew 4 verses 1 to 11, and releasing people possessed by demons, Mark 5 verses 1 to 20. In the Quran, angels and demons also play important roles. The angels obey Allah's orders, while Iblis, Lucifer's Islamic equivalent, rebels by proud when refusing to bow before Adam. This act of disobedience marks the beginning of the struggle between good and evil. Iblis and the Shayatin, demons, try to divert humans from the straight way, while Los Angeles, such as Gabriel, guide and protect believers. In Zoroastrismo, one of the first dualistic religions, the conflict between Ahura Mazda, the god of good, and Angra Mainyu, the spirit of evil, is the central axis of the narrative. Los Angeles, called Yazatas, and the demons, Devas, are the soldiers of this cosmic battle, reflecting the eternal struggle between the opposite forces. Enoch's book is an apocryphal work that deepens the history of fallen angels and their interaction with humanity. He recounts how a group of angels, called the guards, descended to the earth, joined with human women and engendered giants, the Nephilim. Samyaza and Azazel are central figures in this rebellion, symbolizing the corruption of good and the consequences of disobedience. The text vividly describes the struggle between loyal angels to God and the fallen, highlighting issues of divine justice and redemption. In the lives of the saints, demons appear as antagonists who try to divert the saints of their spiritual path. For example, San Antonio el Grande faced constant temptations and demonic attacks during his retirement in the desert. These stories emphasize the victory of good over evil through faith and resistance. In the Divine Comedy of Dante Alighieri, the conflict between good and evil is presented as a spiritual journey. In hell, demons torture sinners, symbolizing the fate of those who move away from divine grace. In contrast, angels appear in purgatory and paradise, guiding and protecting the soul in their ascent towards God. Santo Tomás de Aquino explored in depth the nature of angels and demons, and their role in creation. Angels are described as beings of pure intelligence that serve as mediators between God and humanity. The demons, on the other hand, are fallen angels who chose evil and work to move away the humans of salvation. Aquino also highlighted the free will as the key factor in the rebellion of fallen angels, a recurring theme in Christian theology. In The Lost Paradise, John Milton poetically narrates the fall of Lucifer and his transformation into Satan, as well as the expulsion of Adam and Eve of the Garden of Eden. Milton humanizes Lucifer, exploring his pride and his rebellion, which makes him a tragic and complex figure. The conflict between angels and demons develops as an epic war in heaven, symbolizing the eternal struggle between obedience and rebellion. The symbolism of angels and demons in religious narrative. In religious literature, angels and demons are more than simple characters, they are symbols of internal and external forces that influence human elections. Angels, they represent the divine guide, protection, hope and obedience to higher principles. Demons, they embody temptations, corruption, the fight against virtue and evidence of faith. This duality reinforces the moral and spiritual message of religions, showing that, although evil is present in the world, good always has the possibility of prevailing. Throughout history, religious literature has used angels and demons to explore the conflict between good and evil in its multiple dimensions: spiritual, moral, and cosmic. From the sacred writings to the theological and poetic works, these figures have inspired narratives that not only educate, but also deepen the complexities of the human condition. This conflict continues to fascinate modern generations, demonstrating that the struggle between angels and demons transcends the barriers of time and space, and remains one of the most powerful narratives of humanity. Demonology in the modern age: the study of demons in the modern era, and its cultural impact. Demonology, the systematic study of demons and their attributes, suffered a significant transformation during the modern age, 15 to 18 centuries. This period, marked by the Protestant Reform, the Counter-Reform and the rise of the Inquisition, resulted in a cultural and religious obsession with the demonic. The fear of the power of demons and their influence in the earthly world became a central theme in theology, politics, art and literature of the time. During the modern age, numerous demonological treatises were published that tried to describe the nature, hierarchy and activities of demons. These texts were often written by theologians, clergy, and jurists, and were destined both to fight heresy and to justify the persecution of witchcraft. The Malleus Maleficarum, 1487, written by the inquisitors Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, this book is one of the most and more treatises enfamed about demonology and witchcraft. It describes how demons act through witches to corrupt humans, and provides instructions to identify and punish them. From Occulta Philosophia, 1510, by Cornelio Agrippa, although more magic-oriented than pure demonology, this text mentions the influence of demons and its connection with magical practice. Demonology, 1597, by Jacobo VI of Scotland, then Jacobo I of England. This treatise, written by a monarch, explores the relationship between demons and humans, and reflects the role of demons in the trials for witchcraft in Scotland. Witch hunting was one of the most notorious phenomena of the modern age, and demonology played a central role in it. The belief that witches obtained supernatural powers when agreeing with demons led to the massive persecution of women, and some men, accused of witchcraft. The relationship between witchcraft and demonology. Demonological treatises described how the witches sealed pacts with the devil, attended those and used magic to cause damage. The demons were seen as the true instigators of these practices. Notable judgments, cases such as Salem's Judgments, 1692, in America, and the Judgments of Bamberg Witches, 1626–1631, in Germany are examples of the cultural impact of demonology in the persecution of witchcraft. During the Protestant and Counter-Reform, the different branches of Christianity emphasized the power of demons in diverse ways. Protestant leaders such as Martin Luther firmly believed in the existence of demons and their direct influence on the world. Luther described the devil as an active force that tried to divert Christians from the true path. The Protestant interpretations of demonology emphasized the individual's struggle against demonic temptations. The Catholic Church intensified its approach to demonology as part of its fight against heresy. Exorcisms became popular during this period, with priests specifically trained to combat demonic possessions. Over time, figures such as René Descartes and Baruch Spinoza began to question the literal interpretation of demons. The Enlightenment brought a more rational and scientific perspective that contrasted with the supernatural explanations of demonology. The cultural impact of demonology extended to art and literature, where demons were represented in a vivid and symbolic way. Painters like Hieronymus Bosch and Peter Bruegel the Old Man represented demons in their works, showing apocalyptic and infernal temptation scenes. These images reflected the theological concerns of the time and the fear of the final judgment. Demons' illustrations in demonological books helped solidify their iconography in popular culture. Works such as The Lost Paradise of John Milton, 1667, explore the fall of Los Angeles and the role of Satan as a tragic rebel. Although after the rise of medieval demonology, Milton reflects the influence of these ideas in their demonic treatment. Popular legends, such as those related to Fausto, also reflect fear and fascination with demonic pacts. With the advent of illustration and rational thinking, demonology lost its position as a serious discipline. Science and skepticism, advances in medicine and psychology offered alternative explanations for phenomena previously attributed to demonic activity, such as mental illnesses or possessions. The illustration, philosophers such as Voltaire ridiculed the belief in demons, considering it a vestige of medieval superstition. However, demonology did not disappear completely. The fascination with the hidden resurfaced in the 19th century with movements such as spiritualism and theosophy, although with a more esoteric than religious approach. Demonology in the modern age reflects an era of intense religious and cultural concern for the forces of evil. From the theological treatise to the hunting of witches and artistic representations, demons were an integral part of the collective imaginary. Although demonology as a discipline lost relevance with the arrival of the Enlightenment, its cultural impact lasts, influencing the modern perceptions of the demonic in literature, cinema, and popular culture. The modern age marked the peak and the beginning of the decline of demonology as a religious science, but its legacy remains a source of fascination and study to this day. The Inquisition and hunt for witch. The relationship between the Church, the demons, and the persecution of witches. The Inquisition and hunting of witches represent one of the darkest chapters in the history of humanity. These campaigns, carried out mainly among the siglos 15 and 17, they were deeply influenced by beliefs about demons and their supposed role in the corruption of human beings. In this context, the Catholic Church and, to a lesser extent, the Protestant churches played a central role in the establishment of a theological and legal narrative that linked the witches with the devil and other demonic beings. The Catholic Church developed a theology that explained the existence of evil through the figure of Satan and its legion of demons. This belief led to the interpretation of witchcraft as an explicit pact between humans and demons, turning the witches into agents of evil. The pact with the devil. According to the doctrine, the witches obtained supernatural powers when giving up God and submitting to the devil. This pact was considered not only a serious sin, but also a crime against humanity. Heresy and witchcraft. The Church saw witchcraft as a form of heresy. Like heretics, witches were considered threats to social and religious order. The Inquisition, originally established to combat heresy, became a key instrument in the persecution of witches. Although not all inquisitorial courts focused on witchcraft, in many cases, especially in Spain and Italy, the Inquisition investigated and punished people accused of magical practices. The objective of the Inquisition: defend faith and eradicate heresy. Under this umbrella, the accusations of witchcraft linked to demonology were included. Inquisitorial methods, the interrogations under torture were common, and the confessions obtained in these conditions often confirmed the theological narrative of witchcraft as a demonic pact. The demon and witchcraft in demonological treatises. During the late Middle Ages and the modern age, demonology was systematized in a series of treatises that established the ideological basis for the persecution of witches. The Malleus Maleficarum, 1487. This treaty, written by the inquisitors Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, became the most influential text about witch hunt. He detailed how to identify the witches, the magical practices they supposedly made, and their relationship with demons. The book argued that women were especially prone to fall under the influence of the devil due to their moral weakness. Other important treatises, works such as Prestigius Daemonum by Johann Weir, 1563, and Demonology de Jacobo VI of Scotland, 1597, also influenced the thought about witchcraft, although Weir adopted a more skeptical approach. Although the accusations of witchcraft could affect anyone, the women, especially the old and marginalized, were the main victims. Gender reasons: women were seen as more susceptible to demonic temptation due to stereotypes of spiritual and emotional weakness. Social factors: poverty, widowhood, or lack of social protection increased the probability of being accused. The methods used to prove that a person was a witch were deeply linked to demonological beliefs. The devil's mark, physical signals were sought, such as moles or scars, which were interpreted as marks left by the devil. Physical tests, methods such as flotation test, where a witch would float in water, were common and often mortal. The people accused of witchcraft faced judgments that were rarely fair. The confessions obtained under torture used to take execution, frequently by burning in the bonfire. Victims' figures: although it is difficult to estimate the exact number, it is believed that tens of thousands of people were executed during witch hunt in Europe. Notable judgments: the judgments of the witches of Salem, 1692, in North America, and the judgments of the Bamberg witches, 1626 to 1631, in Germany are famous examples of this phenomenon. As the modern age progressed, several factors contributed to the decline of witch hunt: the rise of rationalism. The Enlightenment brought with it a more scientific and less superstitious perspective on natural phenomena and mental illnesses. Legal changes: reforms in judicial systems limited the use of torture and demanded more rigorous evidence. Internal criticisms: some theologians and jurists began to question the logic of persecutions and the validity of the confessions obtained under torture. Witch hunting and the relationship between the church and demonology left a lasting legacy in culture and religion. In theology, although witch hunt ended, beliefs about demons and their influence in the world persisted in Christian doctrine. In popular culture, the stories of witches and demons continue to fascinate modern society. They reflect those in books, movies, and television series. The relationship between the church, the demons, and the persecution of witches during the Inquisition and the modern age was complex and deeply influenced by the historical and cultural context of the time. While these campaigns reflected the fear of evil and the search for religious purity, they were also a manifestation of social, political, and gender tensions. Although the world has advanced since then, the scars of this dark period still resonate, reminding us of the dangers of superstition and intolerance. The final judgment and the fight between angels and demons, the eschatology and the cosmic battle between good and evil, the idea of a final judgment, a definitive confrontation between the forces of good and evil, is a constant in many religious traditions. This eschatological narrative not only defines the ultimate destiny of humanity, but also reflects a broader cosmic struggle between angels and demons. In this confrontation, Los Angeles, as divine agents, represent light, justice, and order, while demons, headed by fallen figures such as Lucifer or Satan, embody chaos, rebellion, and evil. In Christianity, the final judgment is presented as a culminating event at the end of time, in which Christ returns to judge alive and dead. The cosmic battle between angels and demons, known as the Armageddon, is an integral part of this vision. The Apocalypse of San Juan, the Book of Apocalypse describes a prophetic vision of the final struggle. Satan, demons, and forces of evil face the heavenly army led by San Miguel Archangel and Los Angeles. And there was a great battle in heaven. Miguel and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. Revelation 12 verse 7, Satan, symbolized as a great dragon, is defeated and thrown into the abyss along with his followers. Resurrection and judgment. After the battle, the dead are resurrected and are judged according to their works. The righteous enter the eternal life, while the evil are sentenced to the lake of fire, a place of eternal punishment. In Islam, the final judgment, or Yawm al-Qiyamah, is a day of accountability in which all creation is judged by Allah. Los Angeles play a crucial role in this event. Times angels and demons at the trial. Israfil, the angel in charge of touching the trumpet that announces the beginning of the end of the world and the resurrection of the dead. Mocha and Naka, angels who interrogate souls in their tombs about their faith and actions in life. The demons, led by Iblis, Satan, try to divert humans from the straight way, but will be punished along with the wicked. Times the cosmic struggle. Although the Quran does not describe a physical battle between angels and demons, the constant opposition between the forces of Allah and those of evil is alluded to, with angels serving as guardians of divine justice. In Judaism, the final judgment is linked to the arrival of the Messiah and the restoration of the divine order. Times the Lord's Day. Texts such as Daniel's book and Zacharias mention a battle between God's forces and those of his enemies. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth will be awakened, some for eternal life and others for shame and life imprisonment. Daniel 12 verse 2. Times angels at the trial. Angels are seen as messengers and executors of the divine decrees, while demons, although not as prominent as in Christianity, represent the opposition to the divine purpose. Zoroastrism, one of the first dualist religions, presents a eschatological vision in which good triumphs over evil. Times Ahura Mazda vs. Angra Mainyu. The struggle between the supreme god Ahura Mazda and the evil spirit Angra Mainyu culminates in the Fracareti, a renewal of the world where good prevails. Times the individual and universal judgment. After death, souls are judged, and at the end of the times, all souls are purified. The demons, followers of Angra Mainyu, are destroyed. In Hinduism, the current Kali Yuga cycle is considered an era of moral decline, which will culminate with the arrival of Kalki, the 10th avatar of Vishnu. The final battle, Kalki will lead a fight against Adharma forces, disorder and evil, restoring the Dharma, cosmic order. Devas and Asuras. The struggle between Devas, gods, and Asuras, demons, is a recurring theme, symbolizing the eternal battle between good and evil. The representation of the final judgment and the battle between angels and demons has been a source of inspiration for artists and writers throughout history. Medieval and Renaissance art. Paintings such as Michelangelo's Final Judgment in the Sistine Chapel have vivid scenes of angels facing the demonios while souls are judged. Apocalyptic literature. Works such as Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy describe the fate of souls in the hereafter, with a strong presence of angels and demons. Popular culture. Modern stories, from novels like Good Omens to films such as Constantine, explore this cosmic struggle from different perspectives. The final judgment and the struggle between angels and demons transcend their religious context to become universal symbols of human duality. Represent the internal struggle, the moral and ethical conflict in the heart of each individual. Universal justice, the idea that good, eventually, will triumph over evil. Hope and redemption, the promise of a better future, where evil is eradicated and reigns peace. The final judgment and the struggle between angels and demons are powerful narratives who have defined the human vision of good and evil, both individual and cosmic. These stories, although diverse in their expression, share a common message: hope in divine justice and the certainty that, in the end, the order will prevail over chaos. The figure of demons has fascinated and terrified of humanity throughout history. In popular religions, mythologies, and traditions, demons are represented as malignant entities. With a series of common characteristics, they have a great capacity for influence, corruption, and destruction. However, from a psychological point of view, you can address the question of whether demons are, in fact, projections of the human unconscious, manifestations of our fears, repressed desires, and internal conflicts. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, offered a fascinating perspective on the symbolism of demons in the collective unconscious. For Jung, demons represent archetypes of the unconscious, especially the dark and repressed aspects of the human psyche. These archetypes, such as the shadow, are primary and deep forces that are part of the personality of each individual, but that are usually ignored or rejected by consciousness. The shadow in Jungian theory is a part of the psyche that contains all aspects of our personality that we do not accept, such as dark desires, fears, traumas, and unacceptable behaviors. Demons, in this context, can be seen as a symbolic manifestation of these repressed aspects. Demons as projections of the unconscious, the demons personify these dark aspects of the human psyche, acting as projections of our negative emotions and thoughts. Instead of facing these internal shadows, people could project them abroad, seeing them as evil entities outside themselves. This phenomenon is common in psychological disorders such as paranoia or anxiety, where inner shadow is externalized and takes the form of external enemies or forces. Fear is one of the fundamental engines in the creation of the demonic figure. In many cultures and religions, demons are feared as bearers of evil, capable of corrupting people and leading them to sin or perdition. Psychologically, evil is not an external force, but a reflection of our own fears, unresolved traumas, and internal conflicts. The concept of repression in Freudian psychology suggests that those aspects of personality that are not accepted by consciousness are displaced to the unconscious. The demons, in this case, could be understood as manifestations of these repressed aspects, as a way of warning us that we are avoiding confronting certain fears or desires. The demonization of certain emotions, such as anger, lust, or envy, reflects the internal struggle between what we consider acceptable and what we fear of ourselves. The figure of demons can also be seen as a metaphor for existential anxieties inherent to the human condition. From a psychological point of view, demonic forces could symbolize the deep fear of death, despair, existential vacuum, and the sense of guilt or insufficiency. The demons, with their association with evil, eternal suffering, and condemnation, are often linked to the concept of death and perdition. This reflects an unconscious anxiety for mortality, a fear of the irreversibility of death, and the possible lack of meaning in human life. The fight against demons as an inner struggle. In many cultures, the fight against demons is also a metaphor for internal struggle against the darkest aspects of oneself. The struggle to save itself from evil or demon could be interpreted as the struggle to overcome our own psychological limitations and find personal redemption. In addition to being projections personales, demons can also be seen as symbols of the collective fears of a society. The cultures that have created mythologies on demons often use these figures as a way of controlling and regulating social behavior. The demons personify what is considered bad in a culture, serving to mark the borders of what is allowed and the forbidden. In societies where there are strict norms on behavior, demons become symbols of transgression. People who do not conform to these norms are seen as possessed or influenced by evil, which reflects cultural anxiety towards the deviation of the norm. The collective psyche, according to Jung, myths and legends about demons can be seen as manifestations of the collective psyche of a group or a culture. These myths reflect the fears, values, and internal struggles of that society, projected in the form of supernatural entities. From a psychological analysis, demons can be understood as projections of the individual and collective unconscious, representations of the repressed aspects, the unchanged fears, and unresolved internal conflicts. More than external entities, demons are a symbolic way of facing the shadows that inhabit the deepest of our psyche. By understanding the figure of the devil as a projection of our own psyche, we can begin to demystify the fear we feel towards these entities. In this way, the fight against demons becomes a metaphor for internal struggle to achieve psychological integration, acceptance of our darkest aspects, and, finally, the search for inner peace. Angels and demons have left a deep mark on popular culture, being recurring figures in cinema, music, and television. These entities, which have traditionally been seen through religious and mythological lenses, have evolved in these media to reflect human complexities, moral dilemmas, and universal emotions. In this context, the fallen angels, those beings that were once part of the celestial kingdom, acquire a new dimension. They are represented not only as symbols of punishment, but also as symbols of rebellion and freedom. In popular culture, fallen angels are characters that challenge expectations, those who, instead of following the divine rules, choose a different path. The concept of the fall since grace has been reinterpreted on innumerable occasions, leading to complex stories about internal struggle, repentance, redemption, and the search for an identity outside the divine control. One of the most fascinating aspects of fallen angels in popular culture is how they have been humanized. In many stories, these beings are no longer represented as simple agents of good or evil, but as tragic figures that face the dilemma of fulfilling their destiny or finding their own path. Lucifer's rebellion, for example, becomes an act of challenge against an oppressive system, a search for freedom that makes it a complex and often empathic for spectators. This turn in the narrative of fallen angels as agents of libertad has been used in cinema and television. Films such as Constantine or series as Supernatural explore these characters not only as malefactors, but as beings trapped in a cosmic conflict between duty and the desire to be free. In Supernatural, for example, fallen angels are both victims and villains, fighting with their own mistakes and their consequences while looking for redemption or simply a place to belong. Music has also been a powerful means to explore the concept of fallen angels. Rock and metal bands, in particular, have adopted these themes, using the figure of fallen angels to express feelings of rebellion and alienation. Artists such as Metallica with his iconic song The Unforgiven, or Bring Me the Horizon in his Sopeternal album address these personal liberation issues, fight against established norms and the search for meaning, all framed in the concept of fallen angels who move away from the divine path. The question of whether fallen angels are symbols of punishment or freedom has become more and more central in modern representations. In most religious traditions, the fall of Los Angeles is an act of disobedience that entails an eternal punishment, as seen in the history of Lucifer and his followers. However, in popular culture, this vision has been subverted. The fall is no longer only a punishment, but also a release, the liberation of a being that no longer wants to be a slave to the divine rules, a being that wishes to live according to their own terms. This interpretation has edge implications, deep symptoms. In many contemporary stories, fallen angels represent the search for autonomy and the fight against tyranny. The fall can be seen as an act of courage, a power in the face of absolute authority. Fallen angels, then, become symbols of freedom, not the meaning of freedom without limits, but in the freedom to choose their own path, even if that implies paying a painful price. In the background, the fate of the angels fallen in popular culture invites reflection on the nature of freedom itself. Is freedom a right that must be gained through the fight, or is it a punishment imposed by circumstances? The stories of fallen angels play with these questions, taking the viewer or the listener to question the structures of power, morality, and justice. It is this ambiguity that has made the fallen angels such attractive and complex figures in popular culture. While religious tradition sees them as examples of disobedience and condemnation, contemporary culture sees them as tragic heroes fighting for something bigger, personal freedom and autonomy about their own destiny. This change of perspective has allowed fallen angels to occupy a special place in cinema, music, and television, where, far from being simply evil, they are symbols of the eternal struggle for freedom. The history of fallen angels has been told and reinterpreted over the centuries, being one of the deepest and most captivating narratives in mythology. These heavenly figures, once pure and faithful to divine light, fall out of favor, and with their fall, a series of questions are unleashed that still resonate in the minds of those who face the history of their rebellion. There are many stories that revolve around this fundamental dichotomy: are the fallen angels punished for their disobedience, or were the first to seek freedom? In the Holy Scriptures, especially in the Bible, the fall of Lucifer and his followers is presented as an act of disobedience and rebellion to the supreme power of God. The angels, beings of pure light and order, challenge the heavenly hierarchy for pride and ambition, and therefore are condemned to eternal darkness, thrown out of the heavenly kingdom. The traditional narrative presents the fall as a punishment, a moral lesson about obedience and humility. However, as history unfolds throughout human history, especially in literature and art, a different interpretation arises, one that questions the vision of fallen angels as simple villains. Fallen angels are not just figures that bring evil. In many stories they become symbols of rebellion, a rebellion that goes beyond mere disobedience. This rebellion is not necessarily seen as something negative, but as a cry of freedom, a desire to emancipate the chains of an imposed authority. Fallen angels ultimately represent the struggle for self-determination and control over their own destiny. The dichotomy between punishment and freedom is blurred, and what initially seems to be a divine punishment is transformed into a rupture experience with personal norms and autonomy. In the oldest traditions, such as those that arise from Greek and Roman mythology, the rebellion against the gods is a recurring theme. The Titans, those powerful beings who challenged Zeus and the gods of Olympus, are figures that, like the fallen angels, rebel against a superior authority, but not necessarily with malice, but with the desire to be free and governed by his own will. This vision of rebellion as an act of freedom extends to the narratives of fallen angels. In these stories, Los Angeles are not only punished for their pride or desire for power, but, in their fight against an authority that they perceive as tyrannical, they look for something much deeper: liberation. Lucifer's figure, in particular, has been especially powerful in the history of heavenly rebellion. Often represented as the leader of the fallen angels, Lucifer is not simply an angel that challenges God's authority by whim. His struggle is impregnated with a burning desire for knowledge, of a need to transcend the divine. In certain interpretations, Lucifer becomes the first being aware of his own individuality, the first to challenge the idea that everyone must be part of a divine plan without questioning it. When falling, it becomes not only a symbol of evil, but also of the personal search for freedom and autonomy. In this sense, the fall of Lucifer ceases to be a punishment and becomes an act of self-affirmation and emancipation. The contradiction between punishment and freedom is even more complex when the destination of these is considered fallen angels. In the Christian tradition, they are associated with eternal suffering, condemned to live in hell, but in many later stories, the fall of these angels is presented as a form of sacrifice. They renounce their heavenly status to continue their own will, and although this costs them the loss of their divine home, they gain something even more precious: freedom. They are not simply victims of cruel punishment, but individuals who have made a conscious decision to follow their own path, however dark and difficult it may be. The representation of the angels fallen in literature and later art has transformed this vision. In works such as Paradise Lost by John Milton, Lucifer is not simply a defeated villain, he is a being capable of great philosophical reflections on the nature of freedom and autonomy. Milton presents it as a tragic character, who, despite his fall, refuses to undergo an imposed destination and struggles to follow his own path, even if that means being condemned forever. Through these stories, the fall of Los Angeles becomes a metaphor for the struggle for independence and the right to decide on their own destiny, an issue that continues to resonate in modern culture. In cinema, television, and comics, fallen angels have been reinterpreted in a similar way, exploring their desire for freedom and tension between punishment and rebellion. In series such as Supernatural or films like Constantine, fallen angels are not only antagonists, but complex characters that fight with their own morality and their desire to break with the celestial rules. His fall is no longer just a matter of punishment, it is an act of challenge, a statement that they, like humans, have the right to decide their destiny. Thus, the history of fallen angels ceases to be simply a lesson about the importance of obedience, to become a powerful reminder of the complex nature of freedom, rebellion, and autonomy. In these stories, the fall is not only a punishment, but a search for something bigger, something that goes beyond blind obedience and resonates with the struggles of humanity to find its own voice and its own path. In the shadows of history, where the lights of morality and goodness barely arrive, there is a world of dark rituals and pacts, where demons play a crucial role. Black magic, that current of prohibited and tempting knowledge, has always been linked to demons, who, according to many stories, are summoned through ceremonies that challenge divine laws. The ancient scriptures, the grimoires, and the stories of those who have touched the borders of this dark kingdom tell us about unparalleled power, an endless seduction that has no return. Why do people, in their despair or desire for power, seek in demons the response to their darkest prayers? What makes these beings, originally fallen from grace, become the guardians of the most feared secrets of black magic? Since ancient times, demons have been associated with the forces of evil. But beyond being simple symbols of the forbidden, vehicles have been considered through which black magic practitioners can access power, knowledge, and riches without limits. In many cases, those who feel trapped in the weight of everyday life or in the despair of not being able to reach their goals, seek demons as a way to obtain what they want. Black magic, unlike white magic, is not used to heal or protect, but to manipulate the forces of the universe to its own favor, regardless of the damage that may cause to others. The grimoires, those old spell books and secret formulas, are plagued with invocations and rituals in which demons are invoked to grant power. These rituals, loaded with symbols and words that seem to come from another world, open doors to unknown dimensions, where demons expect, as guardians, to fulfill the wishes of those who have the bravery, or madness, of making a pact with them. But this power comes with a price. Black magic is not a gift without consequences. Those who seek the power of demons, either to take revenge, to obtain wealth, or to dominate others, expose themselves to lose their soul in the process. The demons give nothing without waiting for something in return, and the price they charge is usually much higher than any human being can imagine. It is at this point that the link between demons and black magic becomes even more fascinating and scary. These infernal beings, far from being mere ghosts or shadows, are seen as conscious, intelligent, and ruthless entities who do not hesitate to manipulate humans to obtain what they want. The pact that is established between a black magic practitioner and a demon is not one of equality, but one where the demon has total control. Often, the agreement is tempting: absolute power, infinite wealth, eternal love, or the destruction of an enemy. But behind the promise's curtain, the true objective of demons is hidden: the soul of the invocator. These pacts are not only historical, but have left a mark on popular culture. In the Middle Ages, the defendants of witchcraft were many times people who had supposedly made pacts with demons through black magic rituals. These stories were, in many cases, the echo of a society that feared the unknown, but also reflected the fascination with the limits of what the human being could do when he associated with forces beyond his understanding. Black magic became a symbol of transgression, of challenge to the norms imposed by the church and society, and the link with demons represented the break with the natural and divine order. One of the best-known demons in this context is Baal, who, according to the traditions of black magic, is one of the princes of hell and a teacher in the art of granting wealth and power. To invoke Baal was, according to the legends, the first step to obtain what the human heart wanted the most: power over others. But the price was high, and those who fell under the influence of Baal soon discovered that their success came with a darkness that they could not control. And not just Baal. Demons such as Asmodeus, the prince of lust, or Astaroth, known for granting prohibited wisdom, are also closely linked to black magic, each with their own domain over human weaknesses. The process of invoking these demons is described in the Grimoires as a dangerous and complex ritual. The first of the steps is to create a magical circle, a protection barrier that, in theory, prevents the devil from causing direct damage. Then, the invoker must precisely recite arcane words, many times in languages forgotten by time. However, the magical circle does not guarantee security, since demons, cunning and deceitful, are known for manipulating rituals to escape their confinement. In this sense, the demon is not only a server, but an adversary who plays a dangerous game with the invocator, making black magic a high-risk act, where only the most cunning or desperate dare to play. The demons, according to some studies, are also seen as manifestations of repressed human desires and emotions. The black magic practitioner who seeks revenge, power, or control over others is actually invoking the shadows within himself. The demons not only represent an external threat, but also the internal struggle of the human being with its own internal demons. Through black magic, humans cross the borders of moral and ethical, stripping of any remorse or inhibition to achieve their objectives, but in doing so, they enter a world where the line between good and evil blurs completely. In modern times, although belief in demons and black magic has greatly decreased, the link between them remains a constant fascination in popular culture. Films, books, and video games continue to explore the tempting promise of demons, while dark rituals continue to be a recurring theme in horror and suspense stories. Somehow, black magic remains the last refuge for those who believe that absolute power can be achieved regardless of the price, and in this context, demons continue to be the most mysterious and feared forces of all time. Redeemer angels are figures that stand out in religious tradition as heavenly beings responsible for bringing salvation, hope, and comfort to humanity. Their role varies in different cultures and religions, but in all of them they are recognized as divine messengers, intermediaries between heaven and earth, and protectors of human beings. Throughout mythical scriptures and stories, angels are presented that not only serve as spiritual guides, but also intervene in key moments of human history to bring redemption, forgiveness, and hope to those who are in situations of despair or suffering. In Christianity, one of the best-known examples of a redeeming angel is Gabriel, who presents himself as the angel of revelation. Gabriel is mainly known for his role in the Annunciation, where, according to the Gospel of Luke, he announces to the Virgin Mary that she will give birth to the Son of God, Jesus. This moment is crucial in Christian theology because it marks the beginning of salvation for humanity. Through Gabriel, the message of waiting and divine redemption is transmitted to the Mother of God, who accepts with faith and humility the divine call. Gabriel is also a consolation messenger in other traditions. In Islam, Gabriel, known as Jibril, is the angel who revealed the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad, thus offering humanity a direct guide of God for his salvation. In Christianity, San Miguel Archangel is considered one of the most powerful and redeemers. He is the leader of the heavenly hosts and the protector of God's people. His fight against the forces of evil, as described in the Book of Apocalypse, has a redeeming character because it symbolizes the final victory of good over evil. San Miguel is a symbol of hope for believers, who gives them strength and courage to face their own spiritual and mundane struggles, knowing that in the end divine justice will prevail. The role of San Miguel as a protector extends beyond the scriptures. For centuries, the Church has invoked San Miguel as a defender against the forces of evil, offering comfort and salvation to those who feel attacked by evil, both physical and spiritual. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, an angel plays a redeeming role in intervening in the story of Abraham and his son Isaac. In the book of Genesis, God orders Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. Just when Abraham is about to sacrifice it, an angel appears and orders him to stop, providing a ram as a substitute for sacrifice. This act of intervention of the angel not only saves Isaac's life, but symbolizes the mercy of God, who does not want human sacrifices and offers a way of redemption through faith. The angel, then, becomes a messenger of hope and power of divine mercy. In many religious traditions, the concept of the guardian angel is central. Guardians are sent to protect and guide people during their lives, making sure they follow the divine path. Although they do not always appear as visible beings, guardians are seen as protection and guidance forces that help human beings stay away from evil and follow the path to salvation. In Christianity, guardians angels not only offer physical protection, but also spiritual orientation. They help souls finding peace and divine grace, guiding them in their moments of doubt and anguish towards the light of hope and divine forgiveness. In the Christian tradition, an angel plays a crucial role in the account of the birth of Jesus. According to the Gospel of Luke, it was an angel who announced to the shepherds the birth of the Messiah in Bethlehem, saying, "Do not fear, because I bring you good news of great joy that will be for the whole town. I was born today in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord." Luke 2 verses 10 to 11. This announcement is considered one of the most redeeming moments in Christian history, since it marks the arrival of the Savior that will bring salvation to the entire world. An angel also plays a fundamental role in the resurrection of Christ. In the evangelical story, after the crucifixion of Jesus, the angel of the Lord descends from heaven and removes the stone of the sepulchre of Jesus, announcing the women who have arrived that Jesus has risen. This act is not only a symbol of victory over death, but also represents the hope and redemption of humanity through resurrection. Through this angel, salvation becomes accessible to all believers. In Judeo-Christian eschatology, especially in the Apocalypse, it describes how angels have a crucial role in the final judgment and eternal salvation. The angels guide the righteous towards eternal life, while, vice versa, demons are responsible for dragging lost souls towards eternal conviction. This redeeming act of Los Angeles is fundamental, since it ensures that those who have lived according to the divine will are finally received in the presence of God. Redeemer angels are figures that personify hope, comfort, and divine intervention in critical moments of human history. Whether through the protection of the righteous, the revelation of the divine will, or the guide toward salvation, Los Angeles are presented as agents of good that seek to redeem humanity of sin, suffering, and despair. Through their action, Los Angeles show us that, even in the darkest moments, there is always divine light for those who seek grace and forgiveness. The last battle, the apocalypse and demons, is a central theme in many religious traditions and is interpreted as the final struggle between good and evil, which culminates in the end of the world and the establishment of a new divine order. In this context, angels and demons face in a cosmic battle for supremacy, with humanity as a witness and, in some cases, as an actor in this divine conflict. The apocalyptic interpretations of this battle vary according to traditions, but they all share the idea of a definitive confrontation between the forces of light and those of darkness. In the Christian Bible, specifically in the Book of Apocalypse, also known as the Revelation Book, a cosmic conflict where the forces of God, mainly represented by Los Angeles, fights against the hosts of evil, personified by Satan and his demons. This fight culminates in the Battle of Armageddon, a final confrontation that leads to the definitive triumph of good over evil. According to Apocalypse 19:11-21, Jesus, mounted on a white horse, returns to the world to fight the final battle against the beast, a representation of the Antichrist, and the false prophet, who are allies of Satan. San Miguel, the archangel, also plays a crucial role, leading the heavenly hosts that fight against demonic forces in heaven. In Apocalypse 12, it describes how Miguel and his angels fight against the dragon, Satan, and his demons, throwing them into the abyss. The result of this battle is the defeat of Satan and his followers. Satan is finally imprisoned in lake fire, Revelation 20 verse 10, while those who have remained faithful to God receive the promise of a new Jerusalem, an eternal kingdom of peace and justice. This event marks the final redemption of humanity and the restoration of the divine order, a state where evil has no place. In Judaism, although the concept of apocalypse is not as prominent as in Christianity, there is a vision of a day of the Lord that involves a cosmic struggle between good and evil. In texts such as Daniel's book and certain passages of the major prophets, such as Isaiah, a future day is mentioned in which God will fight a war against the nations of evil and their leaders. This confrontation also has apocalyptic elements, although it is not described in the same way as in Christianity. Angels play important roles, but the final judgment is held by God, who will eliminate all injustice and evil of the world. In Islam, the final battle between good and evil is known as the Dajjal, the figure of the false Messiah, analogous to the Antichrist, and the coming of Isa, Jesus, who will defeat the Dajjal in the end of time. According to the Hadiths, stories of the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, Iblis, Satan, and his demonic followers are involved in the corruption of humanity, but the return of Isa, Jesus, will be accompanied by a divine victory that will restore justice and the peace. In the end, Iblis will be defeated and thrown into hell, while believers will be rewarded with salvation. The final battle in Islam looks as a struggle between true faith and the forces of evil, but is also linked to a judgment in which each individual will be evaluated according to their actions, and the righteous will be rewarded with eternal life in the paradise, while the wicked will receive punishment in hell. In Zoroastrism, which has a dualistic worldview, there is an eternal struggle between Ahura Mazda, the supreme god, representative of good, and Angra Mainyu, the evil spirit, equivalent to the devil. This cosmic struggle has a predestined outcome, in which Ahura Mazda will finally beat Angra Mainyu and his demons, bringing a rebirth of the world in a state of purity and perfection. Although it is not an apocalypse in the Judeo-Christian sense, the end of evil and the restoration of peace and divine justice are in the heart of this narrative. In Greek and Roman mythology, there is no apocalyptic battle in the biblical sense, but there are representations of great cosmic clashes. The most prominent is Titanomachia, war between the gods of Olympus, such as Zeus, and the Titans, primary beings that represent chaos. Although it is not considered an apocalyptic battle, the triumph of the gods over the Titans symbolizes the imposition of order on chaos, similar to the concept of the final victory of good over evil in Abrahamic traditions. Beyond religious representations, many thinkers and psychologists have interpreted the struggle between angels and demons as an inner conflict within each human being. In this interpretation, demons represent dark desires and vices, while angels symbolize the highest aspects of human nature, such as morality, compassion, and reason. This internal battle reflects the process of self-discovery and self-recognition, where the individual must choose between the path of selfishness and vice, or the path of lighting and the common good. The last battle between angels and demons, that create in writings and mythologies, it is one of the most powerful narratives that illustrate the conflict between good and evil, order and chaos, justice and destruction. Throughout religious and philosophical traditions, this struggle is presented as a cataclysmic moment in which the destiny of humanity and the universe will be decided. Although the details of this battle vary, the common message is that divine justice will prevail, evil will be defeated, and eternal order and peace will be restored. The exorcisation, the power to combat the devil, is an ancient and central practice in the Christian tradition that focuses on the act of expelling the evil demons or spirits of a person or place. Exorcism is considered an act of spiritual power, carried out by priests or other authorized ministers of the Church, to free individuals possessed or affected by demonic influences. This practice, which has roots in the Gospels and in the teachings of the primitive Church, remains a very important act in the Christian tradition, especially within the Catholic Church, Orthodox, and other Christian denominations. Exorcism has its origins in the Bible, where Jesus is described by exorcisms. In the Gospels, Jesus is portrayed as a powerful exorcist who expels demons and evil spirits of people. The Christian tradition considers that the power of Jesus Christ is essential in this process, since he is the one who has divine authority to overcome the forces of evil. In the Gospel of Mark 1:23-26, Jesus expels an impure spirit of a man in the Capernaum synagogue. This is one of the first examples of exorcism in the New Testament. Also, in Matthew 12 verses 22-29, Jesus expels a demon of a blind and mute man, which generates debates about Jesus' power to overcome demons. In the Acts of the Apostles, exorcisms made by the apostles are also mentioned, such as the case of St. Paul, who expelled a spirit of divination of a slave, Acts 16 verses 16-18. These stories show that the act of expelling demons is a manifestation of divine power that Jesus' disciples received. In the Catholic Church, exorcism is a formal rite that follows an established ritual. The exorcism ritual is complex and requires the authorization of a bishop. The exorcist, generally a priest or, in some cases, a bishop, must follow a specific protocol that includes prayers, invocations of God's authority, the use of sacred objects such as blessed water, crucifix, and the imposition of hands. The Roman ritual is the official text used in the Catholic Church to carry out an exorcism. The ritual is designed to face cases of demonic possession or evil influence on people, places, or objects. Throughout history, the Roman ritual has been reviewed and updated, being the most recent version published in 1999 by the Vatican. The ritual of exorcism generally includes several steps, times spiritual preparation. The exorcist is prepared through prayer and fasting. It ensures that the person who is going to perform exorcism is in a state of grace and spiritually prepared. Times prior research, the exorcist and support team should ensure that the affected person is really possessed by a demon and that it is not a mental or physical illness. This requires the evaluation of doctors and psychiatrists. Times the invocation of the divine authority, the exorcist invokes the power of God and uses prayers such as Our Father, the prayer of Saint Miguel Archangel, and the invocation of Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary. Times the use of sacred objects, blessed water, crucifixes, and relics are used as symbols of purity and divine power over malignant forces. Times the expulsion of the devil, through prayers and orders direct to the demon, the exorcist seeks to expel him from the person or place. This may last days or more, depending on the seriousness of possession. In the Christian tradition, it is believed that angels play an important role in the exorcism process. San Miguel Archangel, in particular, is considered a powerful protector against demons and a leader of heavenly hosts. Exorcists can invoke San Miguel to help in the fight against demonic forces. In addition, it is believed that other angels also help protect and strengthen the exorcist and the person possessed during the process. In the Orthodox Church, exorcism is also an important practice, although its ritual varies slightly from the Catholic. In the Orthodox tradition, exorcism is done through specific sentences and the imposition of hands. The protection of San Miguel and other saints is also invoked, and sacred elements are used, such as blessed water, for purificar to the person possessed. In both traditions, exorcism is considered an act of faith and divine authority that allows the priests and ministers of the Church to face evil directly and free those affected by demons. In popular culture, exorcism has been a recurring theme in films, books, and other media. Works such as The Exorcist, 1973, both William Peter Blatty's novel and William Friedkin's film have popularized the ritual of exorcism and the figure of the exorcist in the collective imaginary. However, these representations have often been exaggerated or dramatized compared to the reality of the ritual, although the background of history remains based on traditional beliefs about demonic possession. In some cases, exorcisms have been studying from the point of view of psychology. Often, the behaviors observed during demonic possession, such as speaking in tongues, unusual physical strength or personality alterations, have been interpreted as symptoms of psychological disorders such as schizophrenia or multiple personality. However, in the Christian tradition, demonic possession, and exorcism are considered phenomena that transcend medical and psychological explanation. Exorcism remains a central practice in many branches of Christianity, and although sometimes it has been seen with skepticism or has even been associated with outdated beliefs, it continues to be considered by believers as a legitimate and powerful way to face evil and forces demonic. The power of exorcism lies in faith in God, in the authority of scriptures, and in belief in the final victory of good over evil. Through this ritual, it seeks to free people from the dark forces that affect them and restore their connection with the divine. Angels and demons in the new spiritual era address the modern and non-traditional interpretations of these spiritual beings within the context of contemporary spirituality. In the context of the new spiritual era, both angels and demons have evolved in their representations, influenced by a more holistic, individualistic, and often syncretic approach, which combines elements of various religious, philosophical, and spiritual traditions. Angels in the beliefs of the new era are mainly perceived as beings of light, positive energy, and spiritual guides. This vision contrasts with the traditional conception of angels as messengers of God or heavenly beings, with a specific mission of salvation and protection in Christianity. In the new era, angels are seen more as personal guides and spiritual protectors that help people find their way in life, overcome obstacles, and achieve a state of peace and harmony. Often, it is believed that people can connect directly with angels through meditation, prayer, or even through psychic channel or contact. Many people who practice the spirituality of the new era believe that each individual has guard angels who protect and guide him throughout his life. In the modern vision, Los Angeles are associated with positive energy and high vibration frequencies. This belief is linked to the idea that the universe is composed of energies that resonate at different frequencies, and angels are considered beings whose energy vibration is extremely high and pure. Therefore, invoking Los Angeles seeks to raise one's spiritual vibration and create an environment of healing and balance. In some interpretations of the new era, angels are not only spiritual beings linked to monotheistic religions, but also perceived as cosmic beings of higher dimensions, which can have contact with humanity through different planes of existence. These angels, in this context, not only help people in their daily lives, but also guide humanity in a process of spiritual evolution towards a deeper understanding of cosmic unity. In contrast to the traditional vision of demons as beings of evil that seek to corrupt souls, the new spiritual era presents a much more nuanced perspective on demons and dark forces. One of the central ideas in modern beliefs is that demons are not necessarily external entities that fight against angels, but can be symbolic manifestations of dark or negative aspects of the human psyche. In this vision, demons represent fears, traumas, repressed emotions, or vices that people need to confront and overcome to achieve their spiritual development. In this sense, the fight against demons becomes an internal struggle to overcome personal limitations and reach the self and knowledge and healing. In some approaches within modern spirituality, demons are understood as negative energies that come from destructive thoughts or actions. They are not seen as supernatural beings, but as dense energies or low vibrations that can influence human behavior, creating chaos, violence, or despair. The spiritual work consists in raising the vibration to dissolve these energies and promote a state of peace and inner balance. In the philosophies of the new era that adopt a dualistic vision of the universe, demons are perceived not as malicious entities in an absolute sense, but as a necessary part of the duality that characterizes material reality. In this context, demons are not inherently bad, but are complementary aspects of existence, which offer opportunities for spiritual growth through confrontation with the shadows of life. This vision highlights the importance of integrating both the lights and the shadows of being, since both are necessary to achieve full understanding. In the new era, the concept of cosmic struggle between good and evil is replaced by the idea of balance and unity. The polarity between angels and demons dissolves in a more holistic vision of the universe, where both aspects, light and dark, are considered essential parts of the spiritual growth process. Modern spirituality does not see angels and demons as irreconcilable opposites, but as two forces that, when consciously integrated, help the person achieve full consciousness. The interaction between angels and demons is also seen as a symbolic representation of the internal struggle of each human being. Angels symbolize the highest aspects of the psyche, such as wisdom, compassion, and unconditional love, while demons represent fears, judgments, and destructive emotions that block the path to self-realization. The battle between the two, in this context, is the journey of the integration of the shadow, where one must recognize and heal its own internal demons to achieve lighting. In energy healing practices and spiritual therapies within the new era, both angels and demons perform significant roles. Angels are invoked to bring healing, protection, and harmony at physical, emotional, and spiritual levels. Spiritual therapists believe that these beings can channel positive energy to help dissolve emotional and energy blockages. On the other hand, dark demons or forces are seen as challenges that, when confronted and understood, can become opportunities for personal growth. Through energy healing and work with spiritual psychotherapy, it is believed that people can release these negative energies and find greater inner peace. In the new spiritual era, angels and demons have ceased to be fixed and opposite entities. Instead of being representations of the struggle between good and evil, they are understood as energies and symbolisms that reflect the individual's internal journey towards self-knowledge, healing, and integration of the totality of being. Angels represent the superior light and wisdom, while demons symbolize the shadows and negative energies that must be transcended. Ultimately, this modern vision of angels and demons seeks to promote harmony and balance in all aspects of human life. Human morality has been a fundamental issue in religions and philosophies around the world, and in many traditions, angels and demons play significant roles as figures that influence human behavior and decisions. Throughout history, these beings have been seen as external entities that guide, protect, or tempt human beings, promoting both good and evil. In this context, its influence has been understood in diverse ways, from the symbolic representation of the internal struggles of each person, to the concept of supernatural forces that act on human will. In many religions, angels are perceived as perfect beings, associated with wisdom, compassion, justice, and divine protection. The angels, often considered as messengers of the divine will, serve as examples of morality and virtue for humanity. Angels in the Judeo-Christian tradition, for example, are presented as agents of God, in charge of carrying out their will, which implies that their behavior reflects perfect moral models. His role in scriptures, either as messengers of peace or as warriors of divine justice, such as Miguel, highlights the values of obedience to God, protection of the innocent, fight against Mal, and the search for truth. Human beings, identifying with these qualities, seek to emulate the principles of compassion, generosity, and justice that angels personify. In contemporary spirituality, angels also play an important role as sources of inspiration for human morality. Many people believe that invoking angels or meditating on their qualities can help people make more ethical decisions, promoting a more compassionate, generous, and aligned life with universal harmony. Los Angeles, in this context, are seen as catalysts to achieve spiritual well-being and closeness with the divine. On the other hand, demons have traditionally been associated with evil, temptation, disobedience, and diversion of moral roads. In many cultures and religions, demons are the figures that represent the force contrary to good, and their influence is linked to negative desires, overwhelmed passions, and destructive actions. The demons are often seen as tempting those who seek to divert people from their correct moral path, urging them to commit acts of violence, selfishness, greed, or lust. In Christian mythology, the snake, a symbol of the devil, especially in the story of Eden, incites Eve to disobey God, which represents the first act of sin in human history. This action illustrates how demons can influence morality, promoting disobedience and transgression of divine principles. In addition to their role as external forces that incite evil, demons have also been seen as projections of shadows within the human psyche, representing the dark and unconscious aspects of people. In modern psychology, particularly in Carl Jung's theory, demons are interpreted as archetypes of the inner shadow, that part of the human being that is full of repressed emotions, dissatisfied desires, and destructive behaviors. The fight against demons, then, can be seen as a metaphor for the need to face and recognize these dark parts to achieve internal balance and self-understanding. Demons also play an important role in the free will test. While angels urge humanity to follow the path of good, demons offer a tempting alternative, representing the freedom to act without moral restrictions. This battle between angels and demons, therefore, can be interpreted as a metaphor of the human decision-making process, where each individual faces the constant choice between acting according to high moral principles or yielding to temptations that can lead to destructive consequences. The conflict between angels and demons, beyond being a religious issue, has become a powerful metaphor of internal struggle that all human beings experience throughout their lives. The moral decisions that people face are often raised as an internal duel between the desire to follow the straight path, represented by Los Angeles, and the temptation to give in to negative impulses, represented by demons. In the Christian religion, this battle is reflected in the struggle for the human soul, where the angel instigates the person to do good and seek salvation, while the demon tries to divert it towards the conviction. This struggle is essential for the Christian conception of free will, where the human being has the responsibility of choosing between good and evil. The influence of angels and demons, in this sense, becomes a character proof that determines the spiritual destiny of the person. In modern popular culture, the influence of angels and demons in human morals remains a recurring theme, either in films, books, or series. Often, angels are portrayed as forces of light that protect the hero, while demons serve as a representation of internal conflicts and temptations faced by the protagonist. These stories continue to function as inspirations or warnings on how moral decisions can have deep consequences in a person's life. The influence of angels and demons on human morality is complex and multifaceted. Beyond traditional religious interpretations, these entities have come to represent the internal struggles we face when making moral decisions in our daily lives. Los Angeles, with their example of divine virtues, guide us towards the path of good, while demons, with their temptation and disobedience, challenge us to confront the shadows within ourselves. Ultimately, morality is not defined only by external actions or obedience to a divine moral code, but also by introspection, growth, and the constant struggle between our luminous and dark forces. Angels and demons, representing the extremes of human nature, teach us about the importance of balance, self-understanding, and the need to make conscious and responsible decisions to achieve a morally full and spiritually significant life. Throughout history, angels and demons have played fundamental roles in the religions, mythologies, and cultures of the world, leaving an indelible brand in the development of moral, religious, and philosophical thinking. These entities not only represent the cosmic forces of good and evil, but also serve as powerful symbols of internal and external struggles that human beings face throughout their lives. Los Angeles, as divine messengers, have been considered the protectors of humanity, the guides of morality, and the agents of the divine will. From Judeo-Christian traditions to the most modern beliefs, angels have been seen as examples of virtue, wisdom, and compassion. They have provided comfort, guidance, and hope, teaching human beings the importance of living according to divine and spiritual principles. The influence of angels in human morals is clear. Their presence and their example have encouraged generosity, respect, justice, and the struggle for the common good. These principles remain fundamental in most contemporary religions and philosophies, where angels are invoked as spiritual guides and protectors. On the other hand, demons, as opponents of good and light, have represented temptation, evil, and disobedience. Throughout cultures, they have been figures of destruction, temptation, and moral fall, challenging humanity to succumb to selfish, destructive, and dark desires. Its influence on human morality has been equally deep, since its existence has promoted reflection on free will, personal responsibility, and the consequences of our choices. The demons have also been seen as projections of the internal forces of humanity, especially those dark aspects that are repressed in the collective unconscious. The fight against demons, in this sense, is the constant struggle against the most negative aspects of human nature, the inner shadow that we must all face to achieve balance and emotional maturity. The influence of angels and demons on culture and religion is vast and multifaceted. Throughout the centuries, these figures have been interpreted and represented in various sacred books, mythologies, art, literature, and cinema, reflecting both the desire of human beings to achieve spiritual purity and their struggle with the forces that try to divert them from the correct path. In popular culture, angels and demons continue to be recurring themes, often representing internal conflicts and moral struggles that we all face. Whether in the stories of superheroes, horror movies, or spiritual books, these archetypal figures continue to serve as symbolisms of the eternal battle between good and evil. The evolution of these representations demonstrates how religious and spiritual conceptions about these beings continue to impact our way of understanding morality, justice, fate, and free will. The impact of the princes of hell, the demons that personify the destructive forces, has been equally deep. Figures such as Lucifer, Beelzebub, Asmodeus, and Leviathan have left a legacy that transcends religious and cultural borders. These demons, like their angelic counterparts, have served as warning symbols, representations of evil that urge us to reflect on the consequences of our actions and decisions. The study of these beings has allowed humanity to explore the limits of morality and human behavior, challenging our conceptions about good and evil. Through demons, cultures have been able to examine the forces that seek to corrupt and destroy, but also, and in a deeper way, they have offered a mirror for introspection over the failures and darkness of the human being. The legacy of angels and demons is a constant in human history, which continues to influence our perception of the spiritual world, morality, and human nature. While angels teach us to aspire to perfection and purity, demons urge us to confront our internal shadows and recognize the power of freedom and responsibility we possess as human beings. These mythical figures, in their complexity, invite us to reflect on the balance between good and evil, divine and earthly, light and dark, reminding us that, in the end, the path to morality and redemption is a conscious choice that each one must take. The legacy of the princes of hell and the redeeming angels is, ultimately, a will of the transforming power of spiritual beliefs and their ability to influence our understanding of what it means to be human, moral, and divine.